I see dead people.
Hot shit.
Here's Johnny.
Stop.
We have such sights to show you.
Bring the motherfucking ruckus. Fuck you too.
I'm gonna start recording right now. I was doing a sound check, and now I'm gonna start recording because I want you to repeat that.
Perfect.
I want you to give me your opening argument for the narrator.
Sure. Okay. My thesis, if you will.
Yeah, your thesis for Brandon, I think his name is.
Yes. So my thesis for Brandon, which is funny because it will eventually turn into this will begin as an impassioned defense and then end as a prosecution.
Yeah, fair.
But basically, I mean, nobody thinks that they're in a horror story, right? Not from the beginning. That's why it's scary, right? Because nobody thinks that it's a horror story. That's part of how I cope with being scared of, things like the dark and like ghosts and all of the other things that, normal 30-year-olds are afraid of in the dark of night. But but then like in a story like this, it's easy to be like judgmental, and it's easy to be like, well, clearly you're doing all the wrong things and you're breaking all of the horror rules. But like, he doesn't
let
fucking
us be
know
the
he's in a
armchair
horror
critics
story.
from the outside saying, "You fucking idiot,
Right?
You fucking dumbass." Why you turning left when you should be turning right?
Right, and like he thinks that he's about to start his little fucking Sex and the City Carrie Bradshaw arc with his new house and everything. He's like, I bought a new house. I'm gonna go out and serve cunt and get drinks with the girls and complain or whatever it is that men do. And he, and then it turns out that that's not the case. It's not the case at all.
Unfortunately, he's not serving it. He's taking it.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. There's no serving. There's no there's no Carrie Bradshaw running through the rain like perfect hair or whatever. It's mostly just crawling in through basements.
Yeah, crawling
and
in
breaking
dark
bones.
Tunnels. Yeah, hiding under beds, getting arrested.
Hiding under beds, staring at burn victims, watching a pigskin man crawl out of another man.
Yeah.
Yeah, all that good stuff. All that good stuff.
I do want to say if there is in the same train of thought, right? Like we're giving Brandon some grace. If we want to let him off the hook about any of this, I would say the most believable aspect of the series just happened, which is he's holding a knife, screaming in the middle of the street about how he's being haunted by his neighbor across the street, about all of this tomfuckery that's been at play, under the surface. And instead of listening to him, he gets arrested and committed because he sounds fucking insane.
He does sound insane. It's true.
It is the most believable part of this because I think it's something that's downplayed in horror a lot, which is, the chick at the end of Texas Chainsaw Massacre. She jumps in the back of the truck and she just starts laughing and laughing and laughing and laughing. And it's funny because it's how she's dealing with the trauma, the shock, the terror of getting out of that experience and being like, fuck you, like I beat you. But it's a snapshot of what would probably be a long and downward spiral of her probably not being okay for the rest of her life.
Probably not. No, I personally would not be okay if the events of Texas Chainsaw Massacre happened to me.
All of your friends
would be super real.
Sibling get murdered out in the middle of nowhere and then cannibalized and eaten. Yeah, I probably
in front of me.
Be okay. Yeah.
No, yeah.
So
Yeah,
it's something small. You know, I think one of the only franchises, actually now I need to take it back a little bit. Two franchises do this off the top of my head. Three franchises do this.
Mm-hmm.
Four?
Maybe more.
Okay, I'm gonna go in order as I was thinking. Because I think the best example is Tommy Jarvis from Friday the 13th. In part I want to say four. He is a little kid, he's a 10-year-old kid, and he puts a machete through Jason's head. The next time we see him, he's 16 years old, committed in a mental institution because he is not okay after having done such a thing. He is haunted
Yep.
by his past. Then the next example I thought of, which isn't really in the same vein, is Nancy from Nightmare on Elm Street, because in one
I was about
she's
to say,
being
didn't they?
haunted, but in three she's a psych for trauma victims, so she rises
Mm-hmm.
above it. She turns it into a way to relate to people, which is like a step further. It's not the same, but it's similar. And then the other two examples I immediately thought of after that was Kirsty from Hellraiser,
Mm-hmm.
who legitimately after the first one gets institutionalized in the second one, which is probably the most
Yeah.
believable. It's the most believable
I,
one-two punch because there's no explaining how your dad and your stepmom killed well, your stepmom killed a bunch of people in the house that you were in, and then your dad got killed and his skin got stolen and worn by your uncle. Like there's no good way to explain any of
yeah.
this, let alone touching
How do you?
the underworld Cenobite side of it, you know.
I love it actually.
The fourth one I thought of, which isn't in the same vein either, is just Laurie from Halloween. That one's more of a procedural because after the events of the first one, like yeah, you probably need to go get checked out. And
Yes.
that's why the second one takes place in a hospital. But she's not committed. She's like she's like under watch. She's under intensive care. So it's not the
Yes.
same. I would still say Tommy Jarvis and Kirsty are probably more in line with where we're at right now.
Mm-hmm.
Because I you
Yeah.
know, not to do a complete recap of parts 1 through 3, more so just a recap of what happened on the last one, is
Mm-hmm.
we we confronted Paul across the street about the tunnel, about him knowing too much. Something happened with Mitch that we were not able to discern whether or not it was real or if it was just manipulative of the entities, whatever powers may
Mm-hmm.
be. But the main point is we finally had conflict with Paul. It looks like he's keeping the original Paul, what looks like the original Paul, under lock and key in his house, and the fake slash imitation Paul is walking around,
Yeah, pretending to be him.
pretending to be him, and that's why Mitch, you know, it was a eureka moment where we were like, okay, so that's why Mitch
Mm-hmm.
always left this guy alone, because he claims that his dad killed himself. He claims that that nothing was found, that his car was found on fire and there was a body inside, and that was the last he saw of his dad. And then he said like 1 year later to the day, his dad just showed up looking perfectly fine, and he also had
Mm-hmm.
his like full pinky, and that's when Mitch knew that some tomfuckery was at play.
And now, since the entity got Mitch as well, it seems like a
At
similar
least
thing is probably happening.
that's
I
what
wonder
we're
if he went back to
assuming,
Mitch's
is that
apartment, if there would be, yeah. Well, the way that he finally, I mean, like he doesn't talk to his dad at all, right? And then all of a sudden he calls his dad and he's like,
yeah.
oh God, he was at my house with a knife and I'm so scared. Like,
I
oh,
was thinking
now
that
he's reaching
might be
out. It's because he got got.
Yeah, that might be true. I was thinking that there was an element of there was an element of like propositioning, maybe, where it's like
Mm-hmm.
maybe the only reason that Mitch is communicating with Paul is because he couldn't get in contact with Brandon,
Mm-hmm.
and Brandon ran out of Mitch's house completely fucked. That's the last
Mm-hmm.
interaction he had with him.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
not being able to reach Brandon, maybe he tried calling quote unquote Paul. Until we see
Mm-hmm.
Mitch again, it's hard for me to say definitively that he's got.
My personal theory is that if he went back to Mitch's apartment right now, he would find a man turned inside out and then a fake Mitch standing there looking at him.
I would love to see that. I don't know if we're gonna get. I don't know where this is the last episode ended in such a way where I don't know where this is going to go.
Yeah, I have no idea where
Because
this is
we made a
going.
bunch of jokes about how the coat rack is just the trauma we made along the way.
Yes, exactly.
You
That's
know,
so far the vibes I'm getting.
and and there's an element of like disappointment with that being the narrative here, for me at least, because I don't I don't want the story to be. I made fun of it in the second episode. You know, I said something along the lines of like, you can't love someone else until you love yourself. Like I've never believed that. Not in my entire life have I ever liked myself, let alone loved myself. But I've been
Mhm.
absolutely infatuated with other people. So it's just like,
See, that's funny.
for
I need
Paul
to
to
think
be
about
like,
that.
you got to work on yourself to work on the,
Self,
you got to work
yeah.
on your inner demons to deal with your outer demons. Like, fuck no. You think any of the people who had to deal with fucking Dracula were asking themselves like, well, maybe I should take my fucking antipsychotics before I put a stake through this motherfucker's heart? Like, no. Like, no. Leave the
Did you watch
benzos at
Nosferatu?
home. Yeah, I did.
Oh, it was so good. I loved it. I loved it. Okay, I was just thinking about that. Yeah, no, if I was Mr. Thomas Hutter running around a goddamn castle full of demons, I too would not think to
The
take
last
my
thing I'd be
Prozac.
the last thing I'd be thinking about is how I need to better myself. I'd be like, no,
No.
there are
You know,
literal demons. There's a
mhm,
coat rack with sentient knowledge of my trauma trying to manipulate me. To what end, we
mhm.
still don't fucking know.
Yeah, we still don't know.
I at once thought it was a parasite that slowly leeches life off of
Mhm.
these people, but now I really don't know.
It seems like a
Maybe the
hive
person
mind.
needs to exist so it could like proxy them.
Yeah, it seems like it's a well, God, I mean, I'm gonna fucking quote Nosferatu now. It's an appetite. It
I
wants to
I'd love for
consume.
that to be it. I mean, we said when the bear analogy was happening that, you know,
Yes.
most things are driven
It's
by
just
hunger.
yeah, it's just like but also like with wild animals, they're just things. You
But
know, like they're
but
not like
that's the problem. That's my problem
right.
going into this last chapter. How is this thing getting what it wants by institutionalizing this guy?
Good question. Although one
You
of the
can't eat your
rules
snack if it's taken away and put under lock and key somewhere.
yeah, that's true. That's my thing because like it also is like you can't sleep anywhere else or blah blah blah. And I'm like, okay,
Okay, but like
so it wants
what
you to
yeah,
stay in the
but what
house.
parameters does, and that's where
Yeah,
I'm getting
it's
lost in
I
the
think
sauce.
yeah, I was about to say I think there's just too many things going on. I think it's a problem. Like, and don't get me wrong, I'm down for a multi-layered, complicated story, but like I feel like we're just getting so like tangled in these like different plot lines and in these different people and in these
It's
like
ironic.
rules
It's ironic
and in
because
these
the story
symptoms. Yeah.
starts with rules and
Right,
it
exactly.
continues to break them. And I'm sitting here wondering to what end. Like we're entering the last. I think it's interesting because we're entering the last. Excuse me. We're entering the last part of this story. This is the finale. I'm here with Cannibal Siren. Welcome to Lots of Pasta. This is the finale of
Awesome.
the this coat rack can't hang, and
Oh,
I
yes.
still don't know anything about this coat rack.
Yep, we
And
still don't know
and
shit.
it's funny because I usually love like a last minute dime drop. I really
Hmm.
do. I would love nothing more than the last page of this story to be like, "Oh, by the
Hmm.
way, the coat rack was a demon and I had to exorcise it and I'm all good now." At least then I'd be like, "Oh." And I'd be able to sweep it all under the carpet. But there's a part of me that's just like, all right, we got some heavy lifting. This one's gonna need to go places. We got what is it? 35 pages. We have 35 pages to figure this the fuck out. Let's flex. Let's stretch.
Pack my back. Pack all my bones. There's so many bones. Why are there so many bones?
The bones.
The bones. The bones are their money.
You got it. I just in my head, if he is gonna get tasted this episode for
Mhm.
breaking the last of the rules he has not yet broken, I want to know to what end. I want
Yeah.
I want the coat rack to have a conversation with him. No more exposition, just a full frontal. I want to show Brandon everything it's got, all its bits, all its giblets. I wanted to shake him around right in front of him, and I want answers.
We want answers. Add the ghost adventures noise real fast. Sorry, I eat high and watch Ghost Adventures with my roommates, and
That's
wow, I
phenomenal.
miss them.
That's a beautiful memory, and I am jealous that I've never done
Listening.
that.
That means we can do it. When you come down to visit, we'll get super high and we'll
I
watch Ghost
I don't know
Adventures,
if
and
I
it'll
ever
be
talked
fucking
about it on the
awesome.
show, but I did do edibles and actually go to a paranormal investigation once.
Oh my God. I don't know if I could go. I think if I went, I would be so
It was
stressed
like
about being so high.
it was 110-year-old hotel in
Mm.
southeast PA, and the top floor had been a brothel, and like 10 people had died there from various accidents and just issues. And
Hmm.
the suicide, definitely a couple suicides in there. And
Man, you
and
can't even
I
kill yourself anymore. Everybody's doing it.
and
Sorry.
and I had I had witnessed several things that I still cannot accurately explain, and it's given me some Guy Fieri Flavortown flavors to sprinkle over my belief system. and that's in ultimately that's why I look at a story like this and I'm like, but why the coat rack? Why is it haunting? Because I'm so used to hearing the unfinished business or
Right.
the evil machinations that be.
Yeah.
Where do you think it's gonna go? What do you want the answer to be?
what do I want the answer to be? Well, see, I know I've been thinking since you said, like, you mentioned you've never, the self-love thing and everything. I've been thinking about that. And it's funny because, like, I feel like I flipped, like, I had a very long period of self-hatred, and I've worked very hard to move past that. And now I kind of am in this weird place, like, wildly back and forth
Somewhere over the
between
last 5 years, I
wanting
entered
to
like
just,
self-apathy.
yeah.
I no
Yeah,
longer
hey,
hate
listen,
myself, but I
apathy
also
is
don't
better
give a
than
shit anymore.
negativity.
Fair.
See, for me, I go wildly back and forth between being like, I should be hit by a truck right now, to like genuinely just like loving myself. And there are a lot of things about myself that I do really like, genuinely. And it's funny because I haven't had, I won't, like, I'm not gonna like go trauma dumping on your fun podcast. But I've had
I
like
trauma
I
dump
have
on
not
here all
had
the
like the
time.
world's it's your podcast. You can do whatever you want.
I'm just
We
saying,
can
feel
actually
free to
just turn this
unload.
whole thing into
Take the belt off. Let it
well,
all out.
like going to the Olive Garden.
Yeah, you could unbutton a couple.
Just get in there for that soup, salad, and breadsticks.
Hey, when you're here, you're traumatized.
You're traumatized. Wait, please make that the episode title.
When you're here, we're traumatized.
You're traumatized, and then just put like a fucked up Olive Garden on the thumbnail. Fucked up,
I could do
twisted
that.
Olive Garden. Welcome to my twisted mind.
I love that.
Uh,
Yeah.
but no. I have not had a like violently difficult life. You know what I mean? But I have not had an easy one. I have had some fucked up things happen to me in the past, and I was diagnosed with CPTSD while I was in college, and it was like a whole thing. And reading the story and reading about how he's like, you've got to work on yourself because otherwise you'll spend all of your time sitting in this place. It resonates, especially with something, related to like something horrifying or a traumatic event. I mean, like when
Yeah, if we're
I
talking
hate to
about
use this
Zach, that's
word
a
now.
lot. Yeah.
Right, like that's a lot. I mean, like I had my best one of my best friends when I was a kid, like he killed himself.
Mm-hmm.
And so that like it really resonates. Like the loss of someone or like the trauma of like horrifying events and things like that. It sticks with you. And I mean the word triggered has been super, fucked around with, but it means something.
It's
And
it
it
means something
can
to the right
feel
people. To the right people, it
right.
has a definition for a reason, and I'm not someone to
Exactly.
memify that because I absolutely there are things that hit me.
Right. And like, and it's like having a fucking man in your basement. So like you have your good
Mm,
days, right? Where you go out and you're like fine and you're doing your life and you're actually having fun
you're
sometimes
trying
and
to
you like
exist. You're
feel like
trying
a
to just
human
be that
being.
adult to buy the
And it,
house. Yeah.
right? And it's working. It's working. You feel like it's working, but then sometimes you remember there's a fucking man in your basement. And
Mm,
sometimes you go there and you go to that
mm-hmm.
place
And
and
you
then
can't get
yeah,
out.
you fucking get your shit rocked.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's so like the visual metaphor of like a man in the basement, it does honestly um
So you
for
you
me.
found you found a way to you really have, and you said it when the episode started. You found a way to sympathize.
Right. And like granted, I think again, they're like, once the rules showed up and he kept ignoring them, I was just like, boss babe, at some point you need to take personal responsibility, which is a
Mm.
whole other fucking conversation we could have
Yeah,
that would
yeah, and
probably
even
take like
then, agreed, because where the story has gone, specifically the last part that we read together, that
Mhm.
that is where it reaches like unfair. It is
Right.
unfair
And
for for us to put criticizing perspective on him when it is clear that so many things have been outside of his control well before he
mhm.
even got the house. Everyone's been given a shit hand at some point or another.
Right.
One of the biggest
Everybody
things on my
fucked up
record
shit
was
happened.
the first car that I went out to buy myself, I got sold a lemon. Legit.
Oh, God,
I took
that
it for a test
sucks.
drive. It felt great. I was home with it for 2 months before it crapped out on me. And I tried to take
Jesus.
it back. They wouldn't take it. I stopped paying for it.
Mhm.
It got repoed. That was on my record
Ugh,
for 10 to 12 years. My credit was
that
shot for 10 to
sucks.
12 years. It was the first big thing I ever tried doing. And it has left me really sus about huge investments in my life ever since. And
'Cause you feel like you're cursed, right?
you feel like you're cursed. I
Like
feel
things
like
just
there's a man in my basement just trying to fucking do me wrong sometimes.
feel like there's a man,
And
yeah. Like
and
that, yeah.
there's so many different sides to it where I'm now starting to see what you see. I think the only thing I keep coming back to where I'm like fuck you is like my expectations.
Right.
I'm often upset by my expectations because I wanted this series to be horrifying. I
Yeah.
wanted this series to be dread inducing and slow
Mhm.
burn, and I wanted it to be It Follows.
Yeah, that's also what I was
I
kind of hoping
wanted to
for.
look terror in the face, see it walking towards me, and know that there's nothing I could do. And there are parts
Mhm.
of this series that do that. The moment in the basement where he breaks his leg, that was probably one of my favorite parts in this so far.
Yeah, that shit was so scary, bro.
And that was part 1. That was the ending of part 1.
Mhm.
And so it's like I
I
haven't gotten what
also
I wanted since the first part of this story. So it's just like
yeah.
this story took a turn pretty quick, pretty fast, pretty hard. And it's
Mhm.
gone into an expositional subtext of mental health, and I'm here for it. I'm not going to pretend that I'm stable. I think everyone on the show, anyone who's listened this far knows I'm far off from that. But I don't know. It's not what I wanted. And that's what I'm fighting cuz I'm hearing you make sense and I'm hearing you say sympathize, empathize, understand. And I'm saying
Right.
yeah, but horror.
Yeah, and I think also I will say for my hope for the story is that we get like I want it to be a real creature. Like I want this to be real. You know what I mean? And I need to be unequivocally shown that this is just like that no, there is a
Yeah,
fucking creature in the basement and it's gonna get you.
you
You know what
remember
I mean?
Romantic Cabin Getaway. Romantic Cabin Getaway
Yes.
was Wendigos. You remember
Yes.
the that wasn't my husband who slept next to me last night. That was the physical
Yes.
embodiment of death. And it's
Yes.
like, okay, we're and then Apartment series had everything. It had literally everything in the Apartment series. So I agree. Short form, I'm just to summarize TLDR, I agree with you. Because I would love, like I said, I would love nothing more for the last page of this story to be a dime drop where the monster opens its hand, shows all its cards, and says, "You got me." But I also got you. That's
Yeah.
I imagine that that's what would happen if that were to
A
if that
double
were to
get.
happen. It's the I'm gonna explain things to you as I'm taking you down.
Yeah,
Fine,
which I'm fine
monologue,
with that.
whatever.
I'm fine. Yeah,
What I
I'll
think
do
we're
it.
going to get is something else.
I think we're gonna get something in between. I think it's gonna stay ambiguous up to the end, which I don't care for, but I will live.
I agree with you, and it made me let out the biggest, most exaggerated sigh I've ever felt. I
It's
literally went,
I do not I do not care for the because like this is if not a real thing if the real like coat rack was the trauma we made along the way. It's too close to the "it was all a dream"
Yeah,
ending,
it's
which
at
I
that point none
hate.
of this actually happened, right?
Yeah, I hate the "it was all a dream" ending. I hate it. There are so few franchises that do that well. And even the ones that do it well, I'm still like, yeah, but did it really have to just be a fucking
Yeah.
like did it really? So I fingers crossed for more of like a Silent Hill, like you created this place thing
Give me
where it's
your
real
best
because you
example and
made
your
it.
worst example of it was all a dream, in your opinion.
Oh God, I immediately think this is a video game, but I play through because with the same roommates we used to
Yeah.
do like spooky game nights, so
Yeah.
we would order a bunch of food, get high, and like play video
Yeah.
games.
Which one?
And uh, Nature's Anthology, Little Hope.
Little Hope. Yeah, that pissed me off too. Agreed.
I got so mad. I was so mad. That's like the most recent one I can.
You turn Silent Hill into a dream.
Yeah,
Pointless.
it was all a dream. It was just him processing his trauma. And I was like, so
No.
you mean I ran around yelling at myself all night while this poor cop just watched me and tried to be like, well, he's not hurting anyone.
Yeah, that was bad.
Guess I'll just let
Agreed.
him keep running around the woods and screaming by
What's
his damn self.
what's your favorite example of that?
Well, I think of
What's a
Silent Hill
situation
immediately.
where it was a dream and you're like, okay, that's fine.
I have to think. I don't know. I'm not thinking of anything.
I have
Maybe Alice
two.
in Wonderland?
Even that is different in my head.
Yeah, you're right. That's not quite what I'm thinking. I don't know. Honestly, I can't think of a single time that it's all been a dream and I've liked it.
There are two in my head. There are two, and I feel like I've talked about
Maybe
them
this
on
will
the show
jog my
before.
memory.
My first is Jacob's Ladder,
Hmm.
the film.
I have not seen that one.
Tim Robbins. Um, Vietnam War vet guy gets home from Vietnam, and he had some trauma, but he's dealing with it. And he gets home, and things start off really great, and then slowly start to unravel.
Hmm.
And right at the film's climax, where you're putting pieces together, it cuts to him back in Vietnam on the operating table, a nurse trying to get a bullet wound out of his abdomen, and the heart rate monitor flatlines. And you realize that the entire film was this dude's expectations, his dream of going home after the war.
Okay. Well,
That's one good
I
example in
can
my
see
head.
it. I can see it. I can see it.
The
What's
other
the
good
I've never
example in
seen
my
that
head
movie, so I'll take your word for it.
The other good well in my so Jacob's Ladder was the first time I remember that being like a reveal, a twist. That was the first thing I remember watching where I'm like, oh shit, and I'm not talking Wizard of Oz because I feel like Wizard of Oz and Alice in Wonderland and Silent Hill and all of these, I went to a different world and I came back and it felt so real. Like, I'm not talking about that. Like, that's different than what I'm talking about. I'm talking
Right.
about everything you saw just now did not happen. Can confirm, did not happen. Character is not even thinking about it. It does not exist. Because
Right.
in Alice in Wonderland, in Silent Hill, in Wizard of Oz, Over the Garden Wall, whatever you want to say, these characters witnessed these things together. They drew these lines. They wake up and they say, oh, that was wild. I was just in a different world, and you were there, and you were there, and you were there. And there were all these archetypes, and I learned so many things. That's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about it was all
Right.
a dream. Like, and none of it matters. It's inconsequential. Jacob's Ladder is good because the shocking realization that everything you watched totally did not happen plays up to the drama of this was this dude's going towards the light moment in death. Because they say that, your life flashes before your eyes, you get that dopamine kick, and and suddenly, you know, your brain just goes somewhere else to make you the most comfortable you can be right before you kick the bucket. So for me,
Right.
Jacob's Ladder was like the best attempt at showing people how that could be a beautiful and horrifying experience. Because it is very much a horror film. I don't mean to sugarcoat it.
Right. It sounds awful.
There are elements of evil at play. It's the guy from Shawshank Redemption. It's Tim Robbins, and like at some point he's in a rave doing like drugs, and like a girl grows like a demon tail and sharp teeth and horns, and like tries to take a bite out of him, and he's just like, what the fuck, and you're like, what is happening, like what is actually happening? And it's like, oh no, this dude's dying, and it's just everything in his brain scrambling to bridge synapses in his final moment. So that's one example where it's horrifying. The other example I
Yeah,
have,
that does sound pretty horrible.
the other example that I have that I find beautiful and inspiring is Vanilla Sky, the Cameron Crowe
Another one I don't
film
think I've seen.
starring Tom Cruise. Well, I hate that I'm spoiling these
Maybe I
things for
have
you
seen it.
because
No, wait,
because
maybe I have. I think I've seen Vanilla Sky,
because
actually.
the
I think
twist
it's
that it's all
just
a
been so
dream,
long.
the twist that it's all a dream is what makes these films so impactful. So I'm sorry if I'm
Mhm.
ruining this for anyone, but
No, you're
in
fine.
my
No, I'm
opinion,
terrible. Anytime someone tells me to watch something, like I'm gonna be so fucking for real. Since this is a safe space, it's never gonna happen. It's not gonna happen. If
yeah,
you want me to watch something, you have to come
I
to my
have to
house and
physically
make me
come to
watch.
you and make you watch it. No, that's fine.
Yes,
And I'm not even really
yes.
telling you to watch these, Cannibal.
No, no, no. I don't
I'm
mean you
saying,
specifically.
yeah. But you're saying if
That,
someone gives me a rec, they're gonna have to make me physically sit down and watch it.
yes.
Yeah, it's
Yep.
fair.
I'm the worst.
No,
I'm
I
evil.
do the
I'm
same thing. I
sorry.
think it's fair. I make
I'm
lists and I prioritize things. And a lot of the things I
sorry.
prioritize are things I'm interested in more than things people tell me that they're interested in me seeing. So it's fair.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah, because you never know what it's going to be, because it really is like a solid 50-50 shot that when somebody gives you a recommendation, it's like, oh, you would really like this versus I like
Yeah, but
this
I'm
and I
not
want you to
you.
like
I might like you, I might
it.
love you, but I still don't want to see that.
Yeah, exactly.
So in Vanilla Sky, um, you know, wealthy, handsome businessman type gets in a car accident and wakes up a little dismembered, disfigured,
You know when that happens.
and he starts to kind of give up on life because he's like, oh, I used to be such a handsome and successful guy, and now I'm ugly and scarred,
Mm-hmm.
and no one will ever love me.
Rip.
And he does fall in love, and he does fall in love with a woman who doesn't judge him for what he looks like on the outside.
Mm-hmm.
And then it starts to like unravel, and things start to kind of like head trip, where things start to undo themselves and redo themselves, and things start to like his lucid dream starts to patch itself in different
Mm-hmm.
ways, like a video game. And a literal character integrates himself to the movie and says, hey, so like it literally stops the movie on a point and says, in like an elevator, it's just a wonderful conversation about how none of the movie is real. Everything this character has been dealing with, none of it's real. He did get into that car accident at the beginning of the movie, but he immediately agreed to put himself essentially into a medicated coma until the
Mm-hmm.
technology in the world would be better to put him back together. So he agreed to put himself on ice until he could fix himself. So the movie we've been watching is his essentially his coma lucid dream. And it's beginning to get more and more lucid, and he's starting to break out of it. And a literal character appears to say, hey, I'm the mod of your dream experience, and I'm here to tell you that you're starting to become aware that you're dreaming and it's fucking up the program. So I'm going to give you two options. I could reset the program and put you back to sleep, or what essentially is my job is to come here to tell you that you've been asleep for
Hmm.
so long that the world is in a better place and you can finally wake up now. Now the problem with that is the world he went to sleep in is not the world that he's going to wake up in, and the character point blank tells him everyone you knew, loved, and like witnessed in life is like dead, long gone, does not exist anymore. So it's heartbreaking because he fell in love with this woman who very much was real and in his life.
Right.
And so, like, right there at the end of his dream, they're just like, hey, so, if you want to wake up from the dream, we have, I could put you back in the dream. You could go back down the elevator. You could go back to the day one and, go back to dreaming and having this wonderful life with this woman you love. Or
Hmm.
you could wake up and face reality and come back into the real
Uh,
world.
wait,
And
I do
and
remember
the
this. I
only
think
way
I
to
have.
do that is to jump off of a building because you have to kick yourself out of the dream.
Mm.
So it literally ends with the dude like killing himself, but he's waking up from the dream. So
Right.
it's poetic and it's beautiful and it's sad, but at the end of the dream he finally comes to like terms with his like the worst parts of
Hmm.
himself, which in my
Right.
opinion makes it like beautiful and poetic. So there are ways that the it's all a dream can work in my
Yeah,
head.
I see what you're saying.
In my head there are ways it can work because Jacob's Ladder is shock and drama, like shock and awe tactics
Hmm.
mixed with horror and
For
drama
sure.
versus character development, emotion, and like drama for the sake of being melodrama, which is Vanilla
Hmm.
Sky.
Right.
In no way, shape, or form can this story pull off either, in my opinion.
You
I
know,
I don't think this
yeah,
story I don't think this story has the emotional depth to say
no, I
to say the coat rack does not exist. This has all been in your head. I don't think it
I actually
has.
agree with you.
I would love for that to be the case. If they introduce some really great writing in this last part and they say, "Okay, we're gonna dive deep into this character's trauma and actually unpack it and he's gonna come out the other side okay," I think they have their work cut out for themselves. And at the very same time, if they think they have the balls to pull off something like Jacob's Ladder where this character has either been dead the entire time or just been having like a nightmare or some shit, I don't know. I
Mhm.
don't know how they would pull that off. I might just turn off my entire computer in the middle of recording this if that's the case.
No, literally, we'll just blow it. I will get a gun and I will shoot the computer. I'm not fucking around.
You'll have to then drive 10 to 12 hours to come and shoot my computer.
I will, and I will. God damn it, the stakes are high. Oh my god, I appreciate it. I'll just mumble it
I'm
like
I am
15,
however
20
already
minutes.
I am however already rolling my eyes at this first page of the part we're
Oh
reading
boy.
because I'm just there's two sides of it. One side of it is how people I don't think I don't think people can write mental institutions well. And the only ones I have seen write it well
Agree.
are people who have been in them.
Yes.
And unfortunately, like the best examples I have are from like people who came out completely fucking ruined by it.
Yes.
And
There was what was that one? It's kind of a funny story, I
yeah,
think
that
was
guy
the book.
killed
I remember
himself.
reading that. Yeah, he wrote a really good, I thought though,
That's
depiction of a
exactly
mental
what it felt
institution.
like. Okay,
Yeah.
so I to preload this conversation, I've had three experiences with mental institutions in my life.
Yeah.
One of them is my own. One of them was my partner at the times, and one of them was one of my close friends. And in each of these situations, everything this person is saying in their first page is absolutely wrong. So I'm going to interject after I think the first 2 paragraphs to just explain
You
how
know what?
wrong this is briefly.
You know what? Actually, in that case, why don't you do that then? Because then you can just like go off, and you won't have to worry about stopping
But I don't
me.
want to. I don't want to like go off. I don't want to take away from the story too much. I just want to say what's wrong when people write like this.
Got it. All right. Part 13. He will begin in the furthest corner of your basement. Paul was right about one thing. Psych wards aren't like the movies, at least this one wasn't. If anything, it felt more like a nursing home. Boring. Assisted living with cameras and security guards. No electroshock therapy. No drawn out talks with stoic shrinks. No evil head nurse. The movies got one thing right, though. Isolation. Especially for the first few days. I was in hysterics, strapped to a bed, screaming about the man in the basement, screaming about how sleeping away from home would only make him stronger, give him more influence. Of course, I knew this behavior didn't exactly help my case for appearing sane, but when you're staring down the barrel of a gun, none of that really matters.
So, just briefly.
Do it. Tell us.
No, they're not like the movies. And they're also not like nursing homes. They're not like anything. You can't really explain them this way.
They're their own thing.
I don't think they're like assisted living with cameras and security guards. That it's not. It's definitely more complicated like that. But there also are instances of both electroshock therapy and stoic shrinks and stupid dickhead bitchy head nurses. But in my experience, it's the next line that rubs me the wrong way, the isolation. Only in complete serious hazard to your health, hazard to everyone around you, are there moments of isolation. If you are removed of all like ability to hurt yourself, like there's the straight jacket and then there's the knot. And in my opinion, the minute the cops got the knife out of his hand, he didn't deserve to just immediately get put into a straitjacket. He deserved to be committed, yes, but he's not doing harm to himself. He's not biting people. You know what I'm saying? Like he's not trying to kill himself or kill people around him. That's not how that works.
It's not really what's happening.
And that's the side that people like to say, oh, I'm isolated. Like, no. It's basically gen pop. When you are not a harm to yourself or the people around you, you all just get flung into the same room regardless of reason. So you're in the same place as the old people who don't want to be around people anymore. You're in the same room as the nonverbal people that scream 24/7. You're in the same room as the people who are on withdrawal from multiple drug overdoses. You're in the same room as people who previously wanted to kill themselves and need to get set up with new antidepressants. All of these shades of mental instability are put into the same room together. You do not get isolation. They know that that's not how a human heals. Not when you're not a danger to the people around you.
Yeah, exactly.
Unfortunately, the hysterics are on display for everyone. Because if you're in a straitjacket, you're not there. You're in a much more complicated facility. So that's where I want to step in and be like, okay, let's take the fucking gloves off. Let's lower the rose-tinted shades for a second. Let's stop trying to think. It is actually a lot more like One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest.
Right.
So,
which is crazy, by the way, if that's like one of the more accurate comparisons.
it is. It 100% is. You have people like Jack Nicholson who are totally fine and there for the wrong reason, mixed with people like Danny DeVito, who's like nonverbal and actually retarded, mixed with people like Christopher Lloyd, who are fucked, you know, for different reasons. You know, I'm just, you know,
Yeah. You're all in one place.
And that's why I like that it's kind of a funny story, because that is also a close example. That is an example told by someone who experienced it for themselves. In my head, this author just showed his hand to say that he's never actually witnessed this himself.
Regardless, I calmed myself down after a few days. A steady cocktail of Seroquel and benzos might have helped too. I don't know if they would mix those. As somebody who is on Seroquel and who has been threatened with benzos before.
As someone who's been on benzos, they are mixed with a lot of things, but I don't think Seroquel was one of them.
Yeah, I mean, because I feel like with benzos, like mixing 2 downers is like
a no-no.
Exactly, like for benzos specifically, because I do mix 2 downers, but one is antipsychotic and one is an antidepressant. Neither are benzos. Like benzos are fucking like they only prescribe benzos if you are like literally about to die. Now, I had only one goal: appear sane enough to get discharged, get back home, and hopefully salvage this disastrous transgression. Maybe the intruder would give me some leeway since my being here was involuntary. Wishful thinking. That I agree with. I guess there's one other thing the movies get right. The more you try to appear sane, the more insane you appear. It's not easy to pretend things are normal when you believe an ever more powerful hive mind tulpa, whatever the fuck is trying to absorb you into itself, but I put up a decent show. To be honest, getting stuck in the psych ward is the last place I expected to be. Before this, it seemed like everything was leading up to some vast and terrible revelation. Like I'd finally get the answers to all my questions. A final horrific revelation connecting all the pieces together. But now, I was stuck in a borderline nursing home putting together cat puzzles and playing Uno with strangers. Not exactly the finale I had in mind. The anticlimax of it all was suspect, to say the least. I was still waiting for the hammer to drop, to wake up in my room and see a coat rack in the corner. Getting forced into the psych ward changed my view on a lot of things. There was one guy in here. He had OCD so bad he needed 7 cups of water on his bedside table at all times. Each cup needed to be slightly fuller than the last, but he also needed to drink from the 3rd, 4th, and 7th cups every 14 minutes, and then pace around the psych ward 3 times. If he broke the ritual, he was convinced a man made out of paper would climb in through the vents and cut him in half. See, I don't buy this either, because I have multiple loved ones with OCD.
And taking things that they know exist in the world and they're amping them to 11 to try and make it sound like they understand it.
Exactly.
It's just not
like for OCD, like a couple of those things might have been believable, but like a lot of compulsions are like a means. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
I was gonna say compulsion is more of a tick. Like it's just. It's not,
right, and like
it's not this big revelatory thing.
Exactly, it's not like a whole, But anyways, shit like that might have seemed funny to me before in a morbid kind of way, but after seeing it firsthand, after living it through it myself, let's just say I don't look at homeless people rambling to themselves on the street the same way I did before. It's easy to make fun of things that make you uncomfortable. It's not so easy when you're the one going through hell. Paul came to visit too, or at least he tried. I didn't sign off the first few times. And Paul wasn't Paul. The real Paul was trapped back in his house, barely alive, strapped to a hospital bed, and burnt up beyond almost any recognition. A prisoner in his own home. Mitchie showed up once too, but I refused him as well. Mitch wasn't Mitch either. Mitch was dead, a mangled heap of skin on his kitchen floor. Worst of all, I don't think either of them was even aware of it. but I believed that they believed they were actually themselves, unwitting duplicates. Paul kept trying, showing up every other day. He even covered all my hospital bills out of his own pocket. I was borderline broke, so that was appreciated. Out of curiosity more than anything else, I finally gave in and finally signed off on Paul's visit. We sat down in the common area. Imagine a low-income high school lunchroom. Round tables covered in half-finished puzzles. Cold vinyl floors with flecks of milky gray. An older woman stood by the window. Rosa was her name. Every 10 minutes or so, Rosa would call out for the nurse. When the nurse showed up, she'd ask them for the time. They'd tell her the time, and she'd thank them. Rinse and repeat that for the last 3 hours straight. After a while, you start to tune out stuff like that. Everything becomes background noise eventually. Finally, the doors pushed open and in walked Paul. Our eyes met. He smiled sadly, strode across the room, pulled out a rickety chair, sat down across from me.
How have you been?
I shrugged. He nodded and pulled a brown envelope out of his jacket. He placed it down on the flat table and slid it towards me.
That's not gonna answer everything, but it might help some.
Skeptical, I reached into the envelope and pulled out a stack of documents, papers, photos, ID cards. All cleared his throat.
That's everything I could find on my friend in the guest room. Full warning, some of it is a little graphic.
I scanned the first paper, hospital records detailing a man named Lawrence Weiser. A photo, a man lying on a gurney in the Vietnam jungle covered in full-body chemical burns. I flipped to the next page, military legal papers giving Paul the right to shelter and look after Lawrence Weiser, clearance to monitor and treat complications sustained due to long-term effects of a wartime injury. I flipped to the next page. A photo of Paul, much younger, was paperclipped to the corner, his arm wrapped over another man's shoulder about the same age. Both of them looked so much alike they could have been brothers. I kept flipping more documents, more photos, IDs, birth certificates. If they were fake, Paul would have spent a lot of time and money making them. Maybe the intruder created them out of thin air. I turned the page. More photos of Paul. He was setting up a hospital bed in his house's spare bedroom, military personnel helping out. I put down the papers and looked at him. And? Paul scratched his neck.
I know it barely answers anything, but at least it clears up one thing.
I set the documents on top of the envelope and slid it back across to Paul. I drove to Mitch's apartment 40 minutes out of town, saw a fucking fetus monster climb out of his mouth. Then I ran down the hallway and ended up in your basement. Hell, I'm pretty sure my car's still parked out at Mitch's. And you're saying it's in my head? Paul nodded understandingly. That's honestly a really good point. If his car is still at Mitch's and he crawled out of Paul's basement, that is extremely compelling evidence.
Yeah, what time lost there?
Paul looked back over his shoulder, making sure nobody was near shot.
It's not in your head.
He said, turning back to face me.
It's only partially in your head. This thing's got a foot in the door between reality and nothing. If you let it, it'll push that door all the way open and never go back.
I scoffed. Why all the runarounds? Why the stupid fucking rules? Paul leaned back into his chair.
Mitch and I have different ideas on how to fix it. I figured accepting it's there, living life regardless, is the best route. Mitch thinks that's what it wants you to do. The truth is probably somewhere in the middle.
Why'd you say I could pass it off then? Paul looked at me, genuinely confused. In the park, I continued. You said I could build a bunker door and pass it off to someone else.
In the park?
Looked at him in disbelief. Did he forget?
I honestly don't know what you're talking about.
He seemed sincere, but I'd been told more than enough by now. In the park, you told me this long, drawn-out fucking story about how you in between those boulders saw a man down there between the rocks. Told me the intruder dug a tunnel between the houses.
A tunnel?
You're serious.
Look, Brandon, I don't know who you talked to, but it wasn't me. But that doesn't matter. The only thing that matters is you focus on moving past all this. Focus on getting better. The stronger you are, the healthier your mind is, the less power this has over you. Like I said before, once I stopped drinking, started caring for people close to me, all the crazy shit just started going away. Things still happen, don't get me wrong, but I can deal with it now. You learn to cope.
No, you're even you.
You don't. Shit, I don't. But that doesn't matter either. I'm here. I exist. You exist. Work with what you know.
I didn't respond.
How long have you been away from home now?
2, 3 weeks.
Has anything happened? Has the intruder shown up here? Have you died?
I didn't answer, but I got the point. This doesn't make any sense, I said, leaning forward, resting my arms on the table.
That's the point. This thing preys off confusion, addiction, fear, repression, trauma. The more fucked up you are, the better a time it has.
I mulled over, still not convinced.
Has the doctor helped with the meds?
I gave a reluctant nod. As much as I hate to admit it, things didn't feel as crazy as they used to. I felt calmer, more stable. But like I said before, this was all too easy, uncomfortably anticlimactic. The night before I went to your house, I swerved, almost hit a bear, smashed into a roadside post, and cracked my head on the driver's side window. I saw things, experienced things. I saw you driving, looking out through your eyes. Paul nodded as if expecting the point to be raised.
I'm not gonna say it wasn't real, but it's only little snippets of moments, crumbs of conspiracy. Just enough to create a narrative in your head that may or may not be real, enough to be obsessed, enough to...
I saw you driving drunk. You swerved into somebody on a green bike, hit and run. It seemed like you tried to cover it up. Paul looked at me with deadly serious eyes.
I'd kill myself before trying to cover up something like that.
He said with brutal conviction.
Now, I'm not saying it didn't happen, but it didn't happen in this world, and it didn't happen to me, whatever that's worth.
Sure, I said, still not fully satisfied.
You could take Rosa.
Okay. Nurse? Rosa by the window called out again. The staff was ignoring her now. Nurse? Paul looked around, expecting someone to help. She just keeps asking the time, I said. Paul pulled up his sleeve to check the time on his watch.
5:58 in the afternoon.
He said, smiling warmly towards her. Rosa looked at Paul like he was an angel sent from above. Thank you. Paul nodded and turned back to me. More silence. I cleared my throat. You and Mitch talking again? Paul shook his head, no.
He was just worried about you is all.
Still thinks you're possessed?
Something like that.
Paul rubbed his jaw.
I mean, it's not just that, though. I was a shit father, too.
I nodded. You remind me of my old man sometimes.
Shit father, too, huh?
I almost laughed. Nah, he was alright.
Where's he now?
Dead.
Ah, sorry.
Okay.
What got him?
Lung cancer.
Same thing that got my dad. Liver, though.
A strange calm came over me, something I hadn't felt since the nightmare began. A feeling that maybe, despite all its misery, life was worth sticking around for, at least for a little while longer. For nothing else, just to see what happens. We talked about Howie, too. Paul said Howie always struck him as weird, even before the intruder. Maybe he was a servant of the intruder? Maybe he was an unwitting vessel controlled by the intruder to spy on new recruits. Maybe he was just a really weird guy who liked the color green and crossword puzzles. Maybe some things were better left alone. Bell rang out through the PA system. Dinner will now be served in the cafeteria. Please line up on the marks, maintaining a 6-foot distance from one another. At the table gently with his fist.
Well, I'll stop bugging you now.
I forced a smile. All stood up.
I'm not asking you to trust me blindly here, but if you got the patience, I'd love to swing by and visit every so often. I don't got much going on anyways.
Sure, I said, still skeptical. Even though I didn't trust Paul or anyone else for that matter, I had to admit his presence made me feel a little less crazy, a little less alone. Besides, any visitor, even a potential vessel of the intruder, was preferable to no visitors at all.
Take it easy, kid.
He smiled again, then strode back for the exit and pushed through the doors. Paul stopped by every single day for the next 2 weeks. Talk hockey, politics. Sometimes we'd talk about the intruder too, but less and less every day. Eventually brought me someone around, convinced me to work with the doctors. What have you got to lose anyway? Fair point. Paul told me to tell the doctors what they needed to hear. Tell them I acknowledge it's all in my head, even if we both knew that wasn't entirely true. Say what I needed to say to get out, but don't rush things. Only leave when I felt ready to.
That's okay.
Reality is a spectrum.
I'm at this point where it's like, it's dawning on me that the rest of this is just going to be a self-help book.
A self-help book, please. I need I need some goo. Like, come on. I need something. I need some guts.
I think the climax was the I don't know what. Okay, immediate first thought was, I really am sick of Paul not giving answers. There's so much contradiction in everything he says that I can't put a bead on him. And I'd like to think people aren't like that. There's no way for you to be an expert in something and a dumbass in the same topic in the same sentence. Yeah. And yet he is sitting here in front of Brandon saying, sometimes it's like that, sometimes it's not like that. Like, no. I am sick of this. Honestly, the only thing I'm getting out of this right now is that even the author doesn't know what this is.
I was about to say, I feel like we lost the plot 100%. A while ago, and we just never really found it.
100%.
Again.
And now, I'm afraid the rest of this is going to be a self-help on how to get over trauma.
God, I hope that's not it.
But that's what we're reading. Your literal first sentence of this next one is, reality is a spectrum. Is it? Because I'd like to think it's more like a light switch. When you're alive, it's on. When you're dead, it's off.
Well, reality is a spectrum.
Shut up, Doctor Strange.
Things in the realm of thought and emotion don't exist or not exist in a binary state. You know what? I'm just going to keep reading.
Yep.
Belief leads to real actions, terrible and beautiful. Just look at religion. I'm not a believer myself, but it's pretty staggering, the simultaneous beauty and horror created by mythic ideologies. True or not, sometimes it feels like belief itself has more effect on the real world than anything else. I don't know. Maybe the intruder worked in a similar way, molding itself out of belief, obsession, trauma, forcing itself out of the abstract into the concrete like a virus of the mind. Who knows? Paul was there the day before my discharge. The doctors had determined I was stable enough to return to public life. I still felt like shit, but now in a normal, constant haze of vague depression and anxiety kind of a way, as opposed to a supernatural entity is trying to kill me kind of way. Paul and I played crib in the common area, best of 3. He won, as usual. Stretching out his arms, Paul checked the time.
Well, I should head out.
He said, partially yawning.
I'll swing by tomorrow, give you a ride home.
Sure. Thanks, Paul.
No worries, kid.
Paul drove me home the next day. Pulled into my driveway, and sure enough, there sat my car, inexplicably back in its spot, no longer in front of Mitch's apartment. I opened my mouth to ask about it, but stopped myself short. Better live well enough alone.
So what's next for Brandon?
He adjusted the rearview mirror as he spoke. Rear views. Mirror. As he spoke. I shrugged. Probably gonna move upstate, to be honest.
Yeah, I don't blame you.
I haven't checked mail in a while. I'm pretty sure I'm jobless by now. Kind of just fell off the map. All chuckled.
Fair enough. Is that a bad thing, though?
I mean, not really. Wasn't really my favorite job anyway.
What are you gonna do now?
I don't know. Maybe I'll go back to school. Maybe I'll start writing again.
You write?
I used to.
You enjoyed that?
Yeah.
Why'd you stop?
No money.
Well, if you move, you sell the place, that might give you a bit of cushion, huh?
Sure.
I'm not saying what you should do, Brandon, but if you like writing, then at least try it. If you like something else, shoot for that. It's better than not trying. Trust me. I learned the hard way.
Yeah, maybe, I said, mulling it over. Looking back, this conversation, like many others, was a little strange, but I didn't think much of it at the time.
Anyways, I'll get out of your hair now.
Silence. I reached for the door and stopped. Thanks, Paul, I said, looking right back at him. It's hard to know what to say to someone who might have saved your life.
You owe me one.
He said, cracking a smile. Turned away, unlatched the door. I stepped out, went to close it, and...
Oh, one other thing.
I froze, pulled the door back open, hunched down to meet his...
I know you're planning to move anyways, but it's
Paul shifted in his seat slightly.
It's probably better we keep minimal contact from here on out. You know, same goes for Mitch.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure why, but this thing seems to feed off of us being around each other.
I nodded, stepped away, pushed the door shut, and turned back for my house. Paul pulled into reverse, backed across the street, and pulled into his garage. To this day, I still don't know if that was even Paul, the intruder, or something. All I know is he helped me get back on my feet. Well, I'm grateful for that. I rifled for my keys, and something caught the corner of my eye. On the street, parked 7 houses away. White hatchback with tinted windows. The same car I'd seen all those weeks ago. I don't know why it grabbed my attention, but it did. It felt out of place, sinister almost. I shrugged it off, turned away, and opened the door. The smell of cooking hit me. Chicken soup, gravy, mashed potatoes. Howie humming to himself. I pulled the door shut behind me and was greeted with a bright green, brand new basement door.
You like it?
Howie's voice shot down from the hallway. I turned. His bald head peeked out from the kitchen. Yeah, Howie, it's great. I lied. Howie smiled brightly and stepped out into the hallway.
Work's picking up again, so it's from my own pocket. The least I could do for you, letting me stay here.
Thanks, Howie.
How have you been? Mitch's dad sort of filled me in a little, and he's apparently not dead. His kid told me otherwise. Some people are so weird, huh?
Crazy's catching, I said.
Huh?
Nothing.
Oh, I got something.
Howie slipped back into the kitchen and reappeared on the other side, this time with a crossword book in his hand.
9 words, third letter T, last letter M, a naturally occurring yellow blackish liquid found in geological formations below the Earth's surface.
I furrowed my brow. The word was on the tip of my tongue, but I couldn't quite place it. Howie looked at me, eyes filling with anticipation. I shrugged again. It's me. His eyes filled with disappointment. I'll let you know if it comes to me.
Sure, no problem.
Howie slumped back into the kitchen and placed out his booklet. He looked like I just told him his dog died or something. I moved out the next week. Howie offered to stay, pay rent with his newfound income. I agreed. I never did find out exactly what made him leave his old place, but he never brought it up, so I didn't ask. Moved upstate, rented a small studio apartment in a mountain town. Still can't sleep places with basements, but you can't really blame me on that one. Got back into writing hard, too. Started taking online courses, watching YouTube tutorials, stuff like that. YouTube tutorial for writing?
Yeah, I don't think you need that. It's like art.
Right.
You know, like you don't need,
I was about to say, like...
You don't need a YouTube tutorial on how to paint. You just kind of paint.
Got my craft to a place where I'm not entirely embarrassed to share it. Weirdly, all the events actually inspired me to start writing again. Of course, all the loose ends, all the unanswered questions still bothered me. Sometimes something just felt too convenient about the last few weeks. Like I'd gotten out of the woods too easy. Like the hand of an invisible and benevolent God stepped in and waved away all my problems. Deus ex machina. But sometimes I wondered if the intruder was still using me, working towards some unknown and terrifying endgame. An endgame that would reveal itself at any moment. Vague anxiety once again lingered beneath everything. Like a constant rising shepherd tone. Sometimes barely audible, sometimes unbearably loud. I did what I could to put it out of my mind, to focus on other things. Not pushing it away, just being aware that it's there and gently choosing to focus elsewhere. I'm learning to live with it. Learning to accept the unknowable. I'll admit one thing, though. I'm mad. I want to know the unknowable.
I want to know everything.
Now. Right now.
Haven't you ever watched G.I. Joe? He said knowing is half the battle.
And one thing, though. Korak's so freak.
I'm
Wait,
sorry.
did he?
You could say that line one more time.
No, did he really say that?
G.I. Joe, every episode ends with him saying, and knowing is half the battle. G.I. Joe.
This is what I get for being raised as a girl. Oh, God. Being raised as a woman is the worst, man.
Yeah, what
Not
did
because
Barbie
of the
teach you?
Because we missed out on
How to serve cunt.
I don't know. How to serve, like, I don't know, something, I can be anything.
Oh, right.
Did like 50 careers. That's why Mom got me Barbie and not Bratz because she thought the Bratz looked like whores.
I mean, she was right, though.
He was so right. Like, looking back, I'm just like, yeah, I understand. Now they have LOL dolls. They're like slutty babies. It's so much worse than the Bratz.
We grew up at a good time.
We did. Man, I feel so bad for kids now. That is another conversation.
I do want to repeat that line one more time. I'll admit one thing, though. Coat racks still freak me the fuck out.
Freak me the fuck out. Yeah, which, again, despite all my progress, there was something else I couldn't shake. One thing that kept me up at nights. What happened to Zach? Was it really what the police said? Just some long-haul semi-truck driver in the night? Terrible accident? What about the visions of Paul drunk driving, hitting somebody on a green bike? What the intruder's mimicry murder of Zach, pleading and apologizing? What about the... I stopped myself from spiraling. These questions stuck in the back of my head like splinters of wood stuck between fingers. But even here, I'm learning to live with it.
See, that's the problem with this being a tulpa, is that when you spiral, you do give it power. And, like,
Yeah,
I,
that's
I
true.
unfortunately, I'm in this place where it's like, okay, it can't be a tulpa because he spent all of his time, well, most of his time, in the mental institution thinking about it and trying to get over it.
Mhm.
Because every time
Right.
Paul was around, Paul got him distracted and not thinking about
Hmm.
it. But that doesn't mean that he didn't think about it like every other waking minute that he was alone. So if
Hmm.
he didn't get got while he was in the mental institution, then it has to be a form of marinade. If we're still going off of tulpa rules and hunger and, you know, the beastly parasitic nature of this thing, then it has to be him, like, slowly being salted and marinated over the course of these last, like, months.
Hmm.
Right?
Right.
Like, these next 20 pages have to lead to some type of conflict, right? It can't just be smooth sailing for the next 20 pages.
No, God, I hope not. If it is, that's going to be terrible. About 6 weeks ago, I decided to look up Zach's mother, just to call her and see if she was see if she was even alive. Took a bit of work, but I found her. She lived in a care home down in Georgia. I called her on a Wednesday night.
Hello?
She said, her voice sounding almost how I remember it, despite all the years in between. Mrs. Serrano?
Speaking.
Hi, I'm not sure if you'll remember me or not, but this is Brandon Miller.
Brandon?
Her voice filled with recognition. Oh, yeah, that's me.
Oh, it's so nice to hear from you. How have you been? It's been so long.
I'm doing all right. I made small talk for a while, talked about the town I grew up in, talked about the pandemic, the craziness of the upcoming election, and the conversation took an unexpected turn.
How's your father doing?
Oh, he passed away quite a few years back now.
I'm sorry.
It's okay. I've accepted it now.
Yeah, I'm I've mostly done the same with Zach. It still hurts, and that never goes away, but you learn to live with it.
I didn't say anything. I was lost for words. Silence hung in the air until
You know, Zach always had trouble making friends before you.
I didn't know that. Zach always struck me as effortlessly charismatic.
He was a bit of an odd duck, but in a good way. Before we moved, none of the other kids ever really clicked with him. But with you, inseparable.
Huh. Yeah, I was the same way.
How's that?
Not good at making friends.
Hmm.
More silence.
I remember his passing hit you really hard. You didn't speak for months. Your father was terribly worried about you.
Yeah, I'm doing better now, thankfully.
That's good to hear. I'm sure the closure helped too. It helped me.
Closure?
What?
What closure?
You didn't hear?
Or what?
A driver, long haul teamster, came forward a couple years back. All those years back. He was sleep deprived, running across state shipment when.
He trailed off. Tragedy spoke from the silence.
This
She took a breath and continued.
this driver, he grew overwhelmed with guilt. Came forward 2 years back to confess. I met with him too. A kind soul, really. A sensitive soul. Wrong person, wrong place. A terrible mistake.
Where's he now?
He took his own life a few months back. Poor soul. Neighbors found him in a basement corner.
Words basement corner hit me like a concrete wall. Is this connected to the intruder? Is this connected to Paul? Nightmarish thoughts and incomprehensible images raced through my mind. The image of a naked body, pale and decomposing, slumped into a basement corner, a plastic bag wrapped over its head.
You there?
Said Miss Serrano. I stopped myself, took a deep breath, set it aside. Don't worry about it. It's a coincidence. I hope his family is okay, I said.
Me as well.
Threads of conspiracy dangled in front of me like fishing lures. This had to be connected to the intruder somehow. It had to be connected to the rules. What's his name? I asked, almost involuntarily. The driver.
Oh, Mason Parker, I believe.
Huh. I didn't recognize it. Awkward silence.
Well, it's been lovely hearing from you, Brandon, but game night is about to start and I can't be late.
Of course. It was well, Mrs. Serrano.
Take care of yourself. Call anytime, okay?
Okay. She ended the call. I sat at my work desk. The glow of car lights beamed in through the window and swiped across the darkened walls. Raindrop shadows stretched across the room and returned to darkness. I took another deep breath, exhaled, doing my best to stay grounded, using a trick I learned from Paul. 3 by 4. Name 3 things you can see. Bookshelf, white wall, brown desk. Name 3 things you can hear. Rain against the window, tires against the road, outside, neighbor's footsteps above. Name 3 things you can feel. The back of my legs against the seat, the warmth of the heater against my shins, the brush of my shirt as I breathe in and out. Name 3 things you can smell. Coffee, gasoline, burnt hair. Overwhelming terror pushed up from the floor into my toes, through my legs, my spine, into my head. A sickening upward swell of chemical dread. A feeling that something truly heinous, something truly evil, yet emotionless beyond human understanding, was standing behind me. I imagined arms, impossibly long, stretching from the shadows across the room, unnaturally large hands, fingers with extra joints reaching for the scruff of my neck, eager to pull me down through the floor, down through the ground, down through the dirt, beneath the surface of reality itself, trapping me below an invisible barrier, suffocating me underwater with impenetrable surface tension, forcing me to watch, gasping for air as the world above moved on without me. The world above acted as if I'd never even existed to begin with. Eternal suffering. I spun around, expecting to see something incomprehensible, but there was nothing. No intruder. No coat rack. No man held together with nails and wire. Just an empty studio apartment. The orange glow of more headlights swiped across. Slow and yawning light crawling over the kitchen, over the front door, over me, like the beams of a deep-water submarine scanning the ocean floor. Everything returned to moonlit darkness. Against the window drapes, a faint greenish and flickering glow from a neon bar sign across the street. I sniffed the air. The smell of gasoline and burnt hair was gone. Maybe it was never there to begin with. I took another deep breath and exhaled. It's all in my head. Or at the very least, it's mostly in my head. But still, the words only rang partially true. If I'd learned anything over the past few months, it was this. Nothing good comes easy. At least not this easy. As much as I tried to repress it, as much as I tried to ignore it, I knew something was missing. Some piece of the puzzle that may or may not ever be found. I knew this wasn't finished. I took a deep breath, exhaled. I turned back to my desk, popped open my laptop, and started writing.
If it were to end right there, I wouldn't be super upset.
Yeah, I wouldn't love it, but I wouldn't hate it either. I would be okay.
The catharsis of him removing himself from the drama and, the trauma of Zach's death, and realizing that it's not in any way connected to the coat rack, you know,
Mm-hmm.
but also dangling the thread of, you know, the guy who had done it being dead in a
Mm-hmm.
similar way is enough of an open concept for me to be
Mm-hmm.
like, oh, you know, it's ending with like a wink wink nod nod type of thing, you know. It's not
Mm-hmm.
confirming nor denying nor
They're letting you stew in it.
yeah. And I'm okay with that. there's
I'm not adverse
there's
to some minor
enough
stewing.
there's enough answers here for us to say I don't know. I liked the mom. I liked Zach's mom saying, "Wrong place, wrong time. Good person, wrong place, wrong time." Because that's the story to every accident on the planet, and that is more or less Brandon's story now. He, like I said when I bought that car, he bought this house. It happened to come with some baggage. Good person, wrong place, wrong time.
Yeah, sometimes you bet everything on red.
And yet, I say smiling, that still pisses me off.
Well, we have
And it's
our
because
16
of the
pages.
non-answer of it all.
17 pages.
The fact that this author keeps saying, "Yeah, I don't know."
Yeah, I just
Yeah, I don't know. I
well,
moved. I broke more rules. I'm fine.
you know, though, I think that we got like so much information and like so much happened and like it escalated so fast in the first like part, and then the second part like was similar,
Yeah,
and
but
like
then
the
parts
stakes got
2 and
raised
3 were
so
just
high.
exposition.
Right, yeah, we had like,
And now we're being argued with by characters even in the story that some of that stuff might not have even happened.
yeah, exactly. It's yeah, I
It's trying. I'm telling you, there's a reason we have these conversations before we start reading. It's trying to Jacob's ladder, and it's not pulling it off, in my opinion.
I agree with you honestly so far.
Because the ending it's a very complicated dance.
Mm-hmm.
It's like ballet. It's very complicated. You have to be expert at these movements. You have to nail it with a tactical sense of precision. You can't continue to ask questions and not answer any of them. And like, I don't know, are these next 18 pages gonna answer all of our questions? I don't know.
I don't know. And see, it's funny because in the beginning, I remember sitting and I was like, I feel like this is being over explained to me. And then, like, as the story went on, I consistently felt like I was getting a lot more telling than showing.
Yeah, we had that convo
But
too.
then, right, but then at some point, it kind of changed. And now it's like I'm getting exposition constantly still, but it's empty.
Because the story feels
It's empty.
done.
Yeah.
Because we feel like we missed the boat.
Yeah, exactly. Like it feels like whatever
we're getting an epilogue.
Yeah, exactly.
The
And I mean, maybe
the
this is just
problem
them
with an
softening us
epilogue.
up.
The problem with an epilogue is that the story needs to be done
Right.
for the epilogue
I
to
mean,
make
maybe
sense.
they're setting us up, you know, so that we think that it's the epilogue and we get nice and mad.
No,
And
if
then
you
they
set
fuck
us
up
up,
the last.
if you set us up in the epilogue, you're just another 80s movie with a quippy finale that leads to a sequel that never happens.
It's all a dream.
Ah, fuck. Okay. Well, here we go. Let's hope this fucking goes somewhere. Last part 14.
My fucking fingers crossed.
This is a fun one. I like this rule. If you see him do not overreact, he may decide to move on. I think
if only, right?
I think that one is a cardinal one. because this one feeds back to the bear analogy the most. Because if you turn around and run, yeah, the bear analogy might be my favorite part of this entire story. Because wasn't that?
Yeah, I agree.
Wasn't that part 1?
Yes, I think so.
Yeah, that might be my favorite. That might be my favorite conversation in this entire story. My favorite moment in this story is still the second time he goes down into the basement and gets fucked by it, and it grows arms. The growing of the arms and showing something that exists behind the coat rack was the first step in the right direction to never be played ever again in the same story.
Yeah. I agree with you, actually.
It gave me an element of, like, Insidious or Conjuring, because I thought we were going, like, full possession.
Something spooky.
Oh, yeah. It went full spook. But apparently, we're now just...
We're done with that now.
Yeah, okay. A bump in the night startled me awake. I checked the time. 2:58 a.m. Neon green light flickered in through the studio apartment window. I sat up on edge of my bed, staring at the closet door. A white closet door with the zigzag patterns etched across it. Another thump. Above me. I looked up. It was the upstairs neighbors again, mulling about at 3 a.m. on a Wednesday night. Rubbing my eyes, I pushed off the bed, strolled up to the window. It was snowing outside. First snowfall of the year. Drifting dots of white dissolving against the asphalt below. I was about to turn back when something caught my eye. Across the street, down in the plaza parking lot, a white hatchback with tinted windows, engine idling. Was it the same car from before?
Yeah.
It was. I shrugged it off, pulled the blinds shut, crawled back into bed. But now...
Mystery solved. We did it.
Yeah, see you later. But now I couldn't sleep. #no sleep. The bumps and scrapes of the upstairs neighbors felt louder. The flickering glow of the neon bar light across the street felt brighter. Everything felt heightened. Like on fast forward. I rolled out of bed, marched across the room, yanked open the closet door, and a bunch of propped up junk toppled out onto the floor. Old records, unread books, unopened boxes. I pushed it all away and dug into the back of the closet, throwing junk over my shoulder until I found what I was looking for. An old box fan and a red pleated quilt. I stuffed the quilt into the window frame, blocking the outside light. I set the fan up on a chair and blasted it toward my bed. White noise and darkness. I dug through a few more boxes until I found a pair of orange disposable earplugs. Let's try this again. I climbed into my bed and shut my eyes. The gentle gust of the box fan against my face as I drifted off to sleep. There was something about that feeling. It felt like movement. And movement calms me down. Maybe that's why I enjoy aimless driving so much. I shut my eyes and finally fell asleep. I had a dream with Zach in it, but it was more like a memory than a dream. A vivid flashback playing out in the darkness of sleep like a strange and ethereal film. A memory from the week before Zach died. We had found an old car.
Is the real trauma the Zachs we found along the way? Maybe.
Along the way. I've known a lot of good Zachs, yeah.
We had found a good Zach.
We had found an old car, rusted up and stuck down in the riverbed by the Cauldron Cliffs, an old 1950s car likely pushed off the cliff from above by some drunk college kids. Zach wanted to jump across the rocks over the rushing torrents and stand on top of the old car. I didn't share his enthusiasm. Risking death to stand on a car wasn't my idea of a good time. Zach bugged me about it, but I didn't push it. We went back home after that, up the winding trails, through the dried woods, up past Old House and the Rendleshams. We rounded a corner and stepped onto a final stretch of the trail, but Zach froze, pointing straight ahead. Down the trail, about 50 feet or less, a man dressed in white with pin-straight posture stood with his back to us. But this part never actually happened. It was a false memory, a creation of a strange dream, or if it did happen, I had forgotten it. Zach cupped his hands to his mouth and screamed. Do you want to take...
Hey!
I was going to say, do you want to take Zach?
Yeah, sorry, I got lost.
Hey! But the man didn't...
Hey!
But the man didn't move. We both tensed up as long silence ticked by. A growing sense of unease in the air. A summer breeze crawled through the woods behind us and kicked up dry dust from the trail. Sunlight caught through the plumes, and the wind faded back to quiet. Then Zach looked back at me.
You should go,
he whispered.
Brandon?
I looked at him, and Zach's eyes were filled with uncharacteristic fear.
We should...
I snapped awake, cold sweat running down my forehead. Thanks to the blacked-out window, my room was pitch dark now, but something was wrong. I could no longer feel the brush of the fan against my face. I pulled out my earplugs. The fan was still on, a whirring hum. I squinted through the dark as slow and terrible realization crawled over me. Something was stood between me and the fan. Something was stood in the middle of the room. I gripped my teeth, reached for my phone, turned on the screen, and shone it into the room. Empty. The brush of the fan against my face returned. The sense of a presence had vanished. I stared into the empty room, waiting for something to happen, almost willing something to happen, but nothing happened. For 5 long minutes, nothing changed. I rechecked the time, 3:58 a.m. I climbed out of bed, trudged across the room, flicked on the light, and strode back towards the window. I pulled the blackout quilt back and peered outside. The snow was falling faster now. The parking lot across the street was empty. The white hatchback was gone. I looked back over my shoulder. On a hook beside the door, car keys. I drove up the number 7 highway, a winding mountain road. Headlights cut through falling snow like warp speed stars. Window wipers wiped back and forth with percussive rhythm. My Toyota reverberated with the drones of rubber against wet asphalt. No other vehicles in sight. Like I said before, movement always calmed me down. And before I owned a car, I used to go for these long, solitary hikes out in the mountains. There's something about constant motion, outside, alone, peaceful. I drove for almost an hour without stopping, feeling calmer with each passing mile, reminding myself that I'd been away from that house with a basement for months now, months of completely disregarding the rules, and nothing happened. No terrible revelations, no intruder from the basement, no evil doppelgangers, only paranoid and fleeting moments of fear. Maybe after all of that, the rules really did mean nothing, and maybe Paul was right. The snow was falling faster now, getting dangerous. I turned off on this 62 exit and wound back for home. The orange swipe of streetlights against the windshield, the drone of my car, the wiping of the wiper. Up ahead, red lights, yellow hazards blinking on the side of the road. I sped past. It was the white hatchback with tinted windows. The front hood was popped open and a man stood on the shoulder, trying to wave me down, but I didn't stop. Something felt wrong. But before even reaching the next exit, my heart changed. Horror stories ran through my head, stories about broken down cars on lonely winter mountain roads, people freezing to death before the sun even came up, and begrudgingly I signaled off the exit and hauled back around. I pulled a U-turn, parked up behind the white car, hit my hazard lights. The driver wasn't standing outside anymore. The back door of his car swung open and he stepped out, bundled in winter clothes with a scarf pulled up around his face, vaguely familiar. He waved, stepped up to the front of his car and pulled the hood shut. He stepped around to the passenger side and pulled the door open. Hunching over, he reached into his glove box, took out a brown paper envelope, and tucked it into his winter coat. I studied him as he pushed the door shut and strode back toward me. Leaning over, I unlocked the passenger side door. The stranger latched the door open, hunched over, and looked at me. His eyes filled with immediate recognition. He pulled his scarf down, and it was Mitch. A knot twisted in my stomach. I hadn't seen him since I saw something crawl out of his mouth and leave his body in a mangled heap on the kitchen floor.
Brandon?
He said, not sure if it was actually me. It was dark. The interior light of my car was broken. Mitch? I said back, even though I already knew it was him.
Oh, wow.
He looked back over his shoulder.
Small world.
Looking back over his shoulder is one of his tics. I remember that. With Howie and Paul. I nodded. Part of me actually considered just flooring it and getting the fuck out of there, but I didn't. Maybe this was Mitch after all. Maybe his death was nothing but another nightmarish vision, but more than anything, I think I stayed out of curiosity. Always curiosity.
What are the chances, huh?
Said Mitch, turning back to me. I huffed. He was right about that.
A little stranded out here, you might have noticed.
He ran a hand through snow-speckled jet black hair.
I'm calling a tow truck, but the service out here...
He threw up his hands. You need a lift? Immediately regretting the offer. I shook my head.
You don't mind. Exit 25 on your way? I'll take the bus from there.
We drove in silence for the first 5 minutes, all the while the elephant of the past sat between us. Finally, Mitch spoke up.
So, how have you been?
I knew exactly what he was asking about. He wanted to know what happened after I said fuck it and threw his list of rules to the curb. But that was the last thing I wanted to talk about. No more ruminating. No more obsessing over answers. Ever since I moved away from that godforsaken house, my life had improved significantly, and that's all that mattered. I've been good, I said. Another awkward silence followed as Mitch expected me to ask him the same. I reached for the radio and turned the knob. Static blared. Every channel was nothing but white noise.
Yeah, no signal out here,
said Mitch, rubbing his hands together from the cold. I turned off the radio and gripped the steering wheel. And how have you been? I finally offered.
Up and down. No more work thanks to COVID, so I had to move in with Paul.
I raised an eyebrow, and Mitch caught my look and he shrugged.
Thought maybe I was wrong about it, you know?
Wrong about what?
My theories.
Convenient. That's me. That's not him saying that. That's me. Mitch turned away and looked out the window, his breath fogged against the glass. White lines of falling snow streaked past. What brings you upstate? I asked, curiosity slowly building again.
I just needed to get out of town.
Fair enough. You know what I'm starting to think, and I want to say it before the story ends? Maybe Mitch is the one who's passing it off to everyone. Maybe giving the rules.
It could be.
Maybe giving the rules is what starts the infection. And maybe he hoped to give it to Brandon, and when it didn't take him, it fell back onto Mitch. And
I'm wondering
that's
that
why
too.
he's been watching him from his car this entire time. And that's why he didn't want him talking to Paul at all, because Mitch has been the problem child this entire time.
All along, yeah, it could be.
Paul's been fine. Paul's had problems, but they're a red herring.
Yes.
His alcoholism and mental instability is just a red herring. Mitch has been the proprietor of whatever this totally is. I would actually really like that if that were the twist, because I hadn't thought about that.
Honestly, I would be down. I'm not against that, actually. I do not hate that.
Him showing up here, right here, right now, leads me to believe one of two things. This is happening and Mitch is involved. Or B, this is not happening and the narrator is regressing.
Right. And
I'm hoping we get an answer to which of those it is.
Same, dude. I'm dying to know.
Mitch opened his mouth like he was about to say something else, but he stopped, shook his head a little, and turned back to look out the window. More silence. He glanced down, and his eyes caught something. The chrome switchblade sitting in the cup holder. He reached down, lifted it up, studying it.
Where'd you get this?
Weed dealer, back in high school. Mitch turned the blade, flicked it open, flicked it shut. He tossed it back into the cup holder and leaned back in his seat.
I'm gonna get some sleep.
Shifting his weight, he nestled his head against his seat belt, shut his eyes. Despite my paranoia, I felt calmer now. This felt like the real Mitch, but even if it wasn't, I'd be dropping him off in the next few exits anyway. About 30 minutes later, I pulled off onto exit 25. The car bumped over a snag in the road and Mitch stirred awake. Next... Oh, that's you.
Next left up there.
He said, groggy. We turned down a narrow road, walls of dark forest on either side, about 100 feet ahead, a lonely bus stop. Lit only by a cold bluish glow of solitary streetlight. I pulled to a stop in front of it.
Thanks, Brandon.
Reaching for the door, I could tell Mitch wanted to say something else, but he was holding back. Of course, Mitch. Be safe. He nodded, pulled open the door, and paused. He pulled the door shut, turned back to me, and sighed. Reaching into his jacket, he pulled out a brown paper envelope, and I studied him.
Okay, if you don't want to talk about this, but...
He rubbed his forehead with his palm.
And digging a little, doing some more research again, and, well...
His eyes turned deadly serious.
I think I've almost figured this thing out.
I'm rubbing my hands. I'm getting ready. Okay. He reached into the envelope and pulled out an inch-thick stack of papers, photos, and documents.
You know what it wants, what it's trying to do.
My curiosity was screaming at me, begging me to listen. But... Thanks, Mitch. I'm good. He looked at me, confused. I cleared my throat. I'm trying to keep all that in my past now. Mitch stared at me for a long 5 seconds, then nodded slowly. He slid the stack of papers back into the envelope and reached for the door handle.
Change your mind. Just call me.
He said, almost indignant. He pushed the door open and stepped back out into the cold. The snow had turned into a sludgy mix of slush and rain now. Mitch slammed the door shut and wandered up to the bus stop and sat down on the bench. Clenching my jaw, I shifted into drive and pulled away. I'd like to say I kept driving. I'd like to say I left Mitch at the bus stop and that was the end of it, that I had finally won out against my obsession for answers. But I didn't. I barely made it 50 feet before I pulled into reverse and drove back. I leaned over and pushed open the passenger side door, and he looked at me, not surprised that I had returned. He pushed up from the bench, strode over to the car, sat down in the passenger seat, and pulled the door shut. The engine idled as slush and rain beat down from above, the lukewarm gust of ventilation against my face, window wipers uselessly wiping the same mess of ice mush back and forth. Mitch reached into his jacket, pulled out the envelope, placed it on the dashboard.
You sure about this?
I wasn't, but I nodded anyway. Mitch smiled grimly, reaching into the envelope and pulling out a stack of papers.
So after you left my apartment,
He slowly flipped through the papers as he spoke.
called up Paul, told him what happened, told him you were hysterical. You broke the door to get out. I still don't know why I called him, but I did. I think some part of me still believes he's my dad. I still do.
Mitch stopped on a photograph, paper clipped onto a page scrawled with manic notes, scribbled coat rack sketches. It was a photo of him as a kid with the rest of his family, his mother, Holly, his dad, Paul, and even his late sister, Evelyn. All of them stood outside a blue tent dressed for camping, smiling, happy. Mitch smiled sadly as he flipped to the next page.
A month or so after you left, my work fell apart, as I told you. Couldn't afford to pay rent, buy food, so I asked Paul if I could move in. First, it was out of necessity, but also I started wondering again. After our last meeting, maybe there's a way to figure all this all out. Maybe even put a stop to it. I guess something told me the answer was at Paul's house.
He placed the stack of papers onto the dashboard and glanced down. His eyes caught the ashtray full of cigarette butts, remnants from my temporary smoking relapse.
Mind if I...
Mitch reached into his pocket and pulled out a pack of smokes. Go for it. Mitch nodded, squeezed a cigarette between his lips, pulled out a lighter. He flicked, but no flame. Flicked again, still nothing. I reached into my own pocket, pulled out my lighter, reached across, and flicked it on. Mitch leaned forward, inhaled the tip of his cigarette into the flame, and leaned back.
Thanks,
He said, exhaling smoke. I tucked the lighter away. Mitch scratched his eyebrow with his thumb, his eyes darting back and forth as he watched the window wipers seesaw. The blue glow of the streetlight cast shadows of trailing raindrops on his face, almost like sad clown makeup. He cleared his throat.
So I moved in with Paul, took the guest room.
What about...
His old army friend,
Mitch nodded.
Lawrence. Apparently his condition worsened. He had to go back down south for full-time care in a real hospital. At least that's what Paul told me. You saw him, right, Lawrence?
I nodded.
Covered in bandages.
I nodded again.
There's no reason to have decades-old burn injuries bandaged like that.
Said Mitch. That simple
That is
fact,
true.
I agreed, yeah. The simple fact wedged into my head like a needle. I turned back and stared out through the windshield, headlights cast into the darkness ahead. The road seemed to stretch out for eternity now. On either side, motionless trees stood like an audience of silent watchers, ancient, apathetic. Mitch shuffled through the stack of papers and pulled out another photograph.
Look.
I looked. The inside of a shed, filled with dozens upon dozens of coat racks.
This was in Paul's backyard.
He tucked the photo away and pulled out an aerial blueprint of the neighborhood. Lines of blue ink led away from Paul's house in a branching web-like pattern.
He's got tunnels leading to every house in the neighborhood. I think he's the one breaking in, leaving coat racks in the corners.
Why? Mitch put his cigarette out in the ashtray.
I haven't figured everything out yet, but I'm getting there.
He rubbed his nose and continued.
Your friend Zachary Serrano. I think Paul was drunk driving one night all those years and hit this kid on the interstate, took his body and buried it up by the Ballry Cliffs.
How did he know about Zach? I shook my head. I talked with Zach's mom and...
She said a guy confessed to it. Mason Parker, right? Long haul trucker.
I didn't respond. Mitch held up a printout of a news article.
Parker came forward about it 2 years back, right?
Again, I didn't respond. Mitch, increasingly frantic, pulled out another photo and tossed it on the dashboard. A dead body in a basement corner, naked and decomposing. A plastic bag wrapped over his head. It was the same image that flashed through my mind when I talked with Zach's mom. Where did you get this?
It's not important. This guy, Mason Parker, he lost his mind in the months leading up to his suicide.
Mitch made finger quotes on the word suicide.
Same method my sister used, by the way.
His eyes looked slightly crazier with each passing minute.
Mason was on house arrest when he started telling his supervisors that he never actually confessed, that he never even hit anybody. He told them some guy, a drunk driver from a parallel timeline or something, hit and run this kid Zach, and then switched places with Mason. He told them this guy could hide behind people's faces, look out through their eyes. Of course, they wrote him off as insane.
I shook my head.
Oh, Brandon, I know this sounds crazy, but trust me here, I've almost figured this out.
What about how? I said, finding it hard to hear about Zach.
I'm not 100% on him, but I think he's a vessel for the intruder, a channel to spy on new recruits, so to speak.
I didn't respond. Mitch pulled out another image, shards of glass on the road, police caution tape, a wreck of a blue Toyota hatchback upside down in a ditch, totaled.
It's your car, right? This car? The car we're in right now?
Again, I didn't respond.
When you visited my apartment, you told me you almost hit a bear on the way over, right?
I squinted at the image. The car had my license plate. If it was fake, it was a convincing fake.
So the next day,
Mitch continued.
I went out to investigate. Sorry.
You're good.
I went out to investigate and I found this accident scene. Police were already there. Apparently the driver died on impact. I did some digging and it turned out the driver's name was Brandon Miller.
I didn't know what to say. My head was starting to spiral.
Brandon, listen to me. I have more proof.
He pulled out a copy of a police report detailing the nature of the crash.
This wasn't easy to get a hold of.
Holding it toward me, I waved it away, starting to feel my sanity slipping again.
Brandon, this is important. I think I know how to stop it, too. I think I can get you and maybe even my dad back to normal.
I rolled my eyes. So what? I was dead the whole time or something? I love when we have conversations at the beginning of episodes.
Yep.
And then,
Me too.
And then they happen. Why has this happened every episode of this show?
We're just so smart and so sexy. It's
No,
like really difficult.
I love you. I love you, and I love when you try to like assuage me with these statements, but no, really, like I'm bugging sometimes when this happens. Is
this the metaphorical? Am I the man in your basement and I'm here to just
shit?
No, that was the other version of me. She's the worst. I'm great.
So I was dead the whole time or something, I said, trying to stay grounded.
No, but this version of you died.
He held up another image, a close-up of the driver's seat in the total car, a body hunched over the steering wheel, face hidden.
Just like what happened with my dad when he tried driving his truck off the Bowery Cliffs. I think it created another version of you.
And I'm that version?
No, well, I don't know, maybe.
Why? What does it want?
Still figuring that part out.
What does Zach have to do with it?
I think my dad killing Zach is maybe what started all of this. Like, he hit this kid and somehow the intruder showed up and he helped him escape the consequences. Like, he made a deal with the devil. I mean, I have other theories too, but this is just one. But we could put together what we both know and actually figure this out. Think about it.
He said, his eyes filled with manic energy. I'm thinking about it, and it sounds fucking crazy, Mitch. Mitch ignored the slight.
When I was a kid, like really young, I went out to the garage late one night and my dad was there power washing blood off his truck. Told me he had a coyote and I believed him, but now...
He trailed off and pulled out another photo.
Look.
The image was a severed finger laying atop blood-streaked asphalt, a yellow evidence number 8 sign beside it.
That's from your friend, Zach, where he died. That's his finger.
I winced and looked away. I didn't need to see that.
Think about it, Brandon. You just left town, ignored the rules, and now your life is fucking better? Did you really think you could get away from it that easy? Like the rules just didn't mean anything? Did you really think that this was over?
He looked at me expecting an answer, but I just stared at him, seeing the same crazed obsession in his eyes. The same obsession that almost killed me. Mitch turned away.
So I went back to Paul's house about a week ago, and he's not even there. The place is boarded up, overgrown, like abandoned for years. I even asked the neighbors about it. It's like he just stopped existing.
Mitch, he ignored me.
There's too many connections here, too much evidence. You can't just move on with this, Brandon. We need to figure this out. We need to make sure this doesn't happen to anybody else.
Mitch.
We can even figure out why your friend Zach had to die. We can figure out how to save you from this, save Paul, maybe even save my sister.
Mitch.
I'm heading upstate to speak with Mason Parker's cousin, ask her about what he said in the days leading up to...
Enough, I snapped with bitter spite. Mitch looked at me, his eyes wide, sad, like a scolded dog.
Brandon, are you not listening to me? Did you not see these photos?
I've moved on, I said plainly, fighting every instinct in my body to keep listening, keep searching for answers, but I knew enough to know all this searching led nowhere good. True or not, this only led to misery. Mitch stared at me in disbelief. He lifted the stack of papers. I shook my head. He trailed off into silent defeat. I stared straight ahead, eyes locked on the road. Mitch sighed, reached for the door. He froze, his hand on the latch.
I found your story online.
The words hung in the silent air. Mitch's hand slid off the door latch down to his thigh.
You know it's using you, right?
Again, he waited for my response, but I remained quiet.
You need to take that story down.
I shut my eyes, trying to stay calm, trying to focus.
You seriously forget about no third parties? Brandon?
I opened my eyes.
You need to take that story down. The more people read it, the more influence he gains. It's using you. Why do you think my dad randomly encouraged you to pick up writing again? Does that really make sense to you?
Thanks, Mitch. I'll think about it. Mitch's eyes shot down to the switchblade in the cup holder, then back to me. His eyes flicked back and forth, considering terrible options. Mitch, I'm not saying I don't believe you. You might even have some of this figured out, I'm sure you do, but you told me yourself. All this obsession, searching for answers, it's not leading anywhere good. For a moment, his eyes filled with half understanding, and understanding that faded as he turned away and stared out the window.
This is all I got now,
He said, placing the brown envelope onto his lap. He pushed open the door and stepped outside. Turning back, he hunched down and met my eyes.
Take that story down,
He said, but this time it sounded like a threat. A genuine threat, considering he likely knew where I lived. He looked back over his shoulder into the dark forest, and that's when I noticed something I hadn't before. All night, Mitch's face had been mostly concealed in darkness, but now, in the dim glow of the streetlight, I could see something strange. Scarring at the corners of his lips. Pink and blotchy like it was cut with a knife and healed over. Subtle but unmistakable. An image flashed through my mind. Mitch standing in the middle of his apartment, head snapped back as gaunt hands pushed out of his throat, and the corners of his lips started tearing.
Oh, God. See you around, Brandon,
Said Mitch, tucking the envelope away and pushing the door shut. He wandered back towards the bus stop. He sat down. I looked straight ahead, took another deep breath. I exhaled. I shifted into forward, pulled a U-turn, and drove away. At the four-way stop about 100 feet down the road, I reached up to adjust the rearview mirror, and the bus stop was empty. Mitch was gone. I looked back over my shoulder. A crawling chill slid down my spine. He was standing in the road now. Standing with pin-straight posture beneath the street light, his back turned to me. Icy rain and slush beat down from above. He stood motionless, unaffected. The light flickered, and I almost expected him to disappear or move closer, but he didn't. He just stood in the exact same spot, staring out into the endless dark, rigid. I floored it the fuck out of there. Sped all the way home, never looked back. That was the last time I saw Mitch, or at least that version of him. But something tells me he'll show up again, maybe in a month, maybe in a year, maybe on my deathbed. I know the intruder isn't finished with me yet. I don't think he's finished with any of us, you included, but I'm okay with that. I'd be lying if I said Mitch's theories don't bother me. Despite all of his insanity, some of it actually made sense. A disturbing amount of sense. For 3 weeks straight, I fought the urge to investigate further. Fought the urge to start Googling Mason Parker, Paul Carver, Zachary Serrano. I told myself that it was all a part of the intruder's game. Photos, the threads, all of it was just bait. Tantalizing crumbs of half-truths, all designed to pull me back into the clusterfuck of convoluted conspiracy. It wasn't easy, but I resisted. I'm not proud of much, but I'm proud of that. I went for a hike last week, needed to clear my head, so I drove downstate, went to the same trail Zach and I used to explore as kids. I dressed for winter, brought a pack of vanilla-flavored cigarillos, figured I earned a one-time relapse after pushing through all of this. I brought my switchblade along, too, just in case. Everything felt different out here now. Smaller, covered in patches of melting snow. I wandered down the winding trails, down past Old House, past the Rendleshams, down towards the base of the Cauldron Cliffs. The old rusted car was still there, too, the same one Zach wanted to stand on, half stuck in the frozen riverbed. The air was crisp. A gentle breeze swept up from downriver and pushed through me like a spirit. I stepped up to the edge of the bank. I breathed in. I stepped out. Setting a foot onto the ice, it was solid, like concrete. I exhaled. I set both feet out. It felt safe. I shuffled across the river towards the abandoned car, slipping as I went. I stood on top of that rusted car in the middle of the icy riverbed at the bottom of the Cauldron Cliffs, I pulled out a smoke, lit up, inhaled. The warm rush of nicotine poured through me like an old but toxic friend. I'd like to say I had some profound insight here, some meaningful revelation, but I didn't. If anything, I just felt sadder about Zach than I ever felt before. I sat there for an hour, maybe two. It was hard to know. Another breeze pushed up from downriver and chilled through me. It was getting colder. Time to go. I tucked the now empty pack of smokes back into my pocket. I pushed up from the dead car and hobbled my way back across the icy riverbed and stepped up onto the riverbank. Time to go home. I made my way back up the winding trails, up past Old House, past the Rendleshams, over Planters Creek. I turned the corner and stepped onto the last stretch of a long, straight path through the sparse winter forest, the same path from my last memory with Zach. I kept walking and a branch snapped behind me. I spun around, almost 20 feet down the path. A grizzly, malnourished, gaunt, lumbered onto the trail. I froze. I don't even know grizzlies lived out here. But even if they did, shouldn't they be hibernating? The bear froze, stared at me, huffed. Hot fog pushed out through its nostrils. Fear rushed through me like a knife. I stepped backwards, started to turn away, started to think about running, but I stopped. I turned back. I stared into the old creature's silent eyes. I took a deep breath. I exhaled. The bear raised its head, studying me, judging me. "Hey," I said, as calm as I could manage. "How have you been?" The bear's head tilted slightly and it took a quick step forward. I didn't move. I kept talking. I told her about how I used to go hiking up here with my friend Zach. I told her about my year, about the coat rack in the basement corner. All the while, slowly backing up, the bear matched my pace, the gap between us shrinking with each step. I stopped moving, reached back, pulled out my pack of smokes, an empty carton now. I placed it gently on the ground and then I took another careful step backwards. The bear matched me, pushed forward as I stepped back, and I stopped. I gritted my teeth and this time took a step forward, a step toward the bear. It looked at me, confused, primal fear shuffling through my body like a deck of manic cards, but I didn't have time to worry about that right now. I set it aside. The bear sniffed the air again, then took another more cautious step forward, and another one. Everything in my body screamed at me to run, screamed at me to turn heel and bolt, but I didn't. I stood motionless, eyes locked with the bear. She reached the ground. The carton bent forward, sniffing it, turning it over with her nose, curious. I exhaled slowly and took another step back. She looked back up at me, almost annoyed at my being there now, and she went back to biting and pawing at the pack. I took another step, and another one step after another until I was 50 feet away, until I was 100 feet away. 200 feet, I stepped backward until I reached the bend, rounded the corner, walked to the parking lot, got in my car, and drove back home. Again, no profound insights or realizations came over me. I just felt sad. I missed my dad. I missed Zach. Of course, I know this isn't done. I don't think it ever will be. I know I haven't seen the last of Mitch, Howie, maybe even Paul. I know Mitch isn't going to stop until the story is taken down, and something tells me the intruder will follow me until the day I die. I've learned to live with that. Whatever happens, I'm okay with it. I'm not happy about it, but I accept it. Honestly, though, Mitch might be right. I even considered deleting this story. It seems possible that the intruder, if he's real, might be using me. might be using me to spread its influence to whoever reads this, but I don't care anymore. Why would I? For the first time in my life, I'm okay with waking up in the morning. I'm okay with existing. And as much as I hate to admit it, ever since the intruder showed up, ever since I stopped following those stupid rules, ever since I stopped searching for answers, ever since I accepted things and moved on, my life has only gotten better. And maybe yours will, too.
Well, felt book.
The bear sequence saved it from being an extreme disappointment to me.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's
Like
because
the bear. And I mean,
I
he was
loved
the
that
bear.
analogy from the beginning.
So are we supposed to believe that Mitch is still like running around
No,
trying to figure this shit out?
I think we were right. I think Mitch is just another agent for this thing, and I think he possibly has been this entire time. I think a
This is
part
meant
of
to
what we
be.
said was right. I think he has always been pushing a narrative, if only to start the thread from unraveling the entire fucking sweater.
I feel like this is a parallel to, remember when Paul was talking about every, like, Paul was talking about how he had been doing really well and he had ignored the intruder for a while, and then he turned around and a bottle of his
It left a
favorite
bottle of
whiskey
bourbon,
just
yeah,
happened
right
to
there.
be,
Yeah.
yeah, there. I wonder if this was his bottle of bourbon moment where the creature offered him the thing that he wanted the most, because he wanted answers from the get-go, which is why he was so like terrible in the beginning, because he was curious.
that's our experience as readers too.
Mm-hmm.
I'm I'm starting to come around a little bit more. I wanna start by saying that I am happy with the ending. I'm happy with the ending because I realized that a part of its entire prognosis is that sometimes life doesn't give you answers for things that you have questions about, and sometimes you just have to fucking
That's
deal with it.
true.
And
That's true.
I'm
And I
okay
mean,
with that because I think we ask ourselves on a daily basis why this happened to me. You're like, why do bad things happen to good people? And I think ultimately,
mhm.
the allegory with religion in the middle there, I think shit just happens.
I was about to say, I mean, it's similar to with like I mean, like trauma, like bad things
Yeah,
happen to people
we said it
sometimes.
at the beginning, like car accidents just happen.
Right. Car accidents just happen and there's nothing you can do about it. I mean, like people die randomly for no fucking reason, way younger than they should. Like people, your house, like you lose things, things are stolen from you. You forget how to be, you forget the kind of person you were, like shit just happens to people. There's no rhyme or reason, and
And
trying to make sense of it will drive you insane.
and
So
that is something I came to terms with in the middle of reading this because
um
I think I don't like it. Like me coming to terms with it and me being like recalcitrant is like me being like, yeah, I guess, towards the ending of the story. And that's me saying, if that's the story you're trying to tell, I guess it checks out. I'm not saying I love it. I'm not even saying I like it. I'm saying it makes sense.
yeah, I agree. I'm torn about it personally. Like,
And
I don't hate it.
Mitch showing up and being like, hey, here's a little bit of rope. You start pulling, it all might start unraveling again. Like I think it's the addiction. You know, it's the addiction side of
Yeah.
that, where if you desperately crave answers in a situation where there are none, I think you can go down a vicious rabbit hole of what essentially, you know, this entire like tulpa thing is after. It wants you to focus on it. It wants you to think about it. It wants you to eat, sleep, breathe it. And I think that's why someone like Paul saying, I dug myself out of that cave and I got over it and I bettered myself, and that's how you can better yourself. Like, I don't like every time he said that, and it's because I hate when people talk like that, but for the truth of the story, it's it's a more complicated way of saying just don't think about it and it won't bother you, which is a very human thing to do. You've been saying that for close to 10 years. Ironically, you've always said that you would ignore something terrifying if it happened to you. You've always talked about how if you were in the presence of something evil or terrifying, you would go out of your way to ignore it.
Yes. Yes, I
And I
have,
think
and
I
I
think it's
would.
funny that that's kind of the message of this story. Like that's
Hmm.
where Brandon ends up. He ends up by acknowledging it and then moving the fuck on.
Listen, I'm honestly, I kind of got to give the story respect for that because I feel like I think that we took a little bit too. I think I'm down for the ending. I'm down for the concept. I'm even down for all of the characters. But I feel like it just took us a little too long to get here, and the road
It's because of the
just
tomfuckery in between parts 1 and 4. Part 1 was fine, part
did a
4 was
little.
a little played out.
Yeah. Yeah.
But parts 2 and 3 were confusing because they
Hmm.
were conflicting, they were hypocritical,
Yes.
they were gaslighting, there were 8 different things going on. We were
Yes.
we were getting sequences that were real that weren't real right up against each other. Like I
Hmm.
don't like that. I don't play that. Like if
Yeah,
you're
it
going to
was
be
just
an
a little
unreliable
too much for me.
narrator, that's one thing, but a narrator who cannot discern reality, again, does that aggravating thing I mentioned at the beginning of this episode where Paul just kind of looks at you and says, I don't know. Well,
Yeah.
you're the exposition king, shouldn't you know? No, I don't have all the answers. Well, that's not good enough. You know? Like
Yeah,
that's
not when you
not for the
it's
finale.
you can't give us all of the answers and then take them away and be like, "No, I don't have them anymore."
Well,
Like
it's
how
not
to,
even that. The crazier thing is he's holding up both hands and saying sometimes it is and sometimes it isn't.
Mhm.
And I'm like,
Yeah, see, and
no. I mean, I know the entire world exists in shades of gray, and not everything is black or white. But this is a very
Mhm.
like, am I being haunted or am I not? That's not
Right.
an essence of gray. That's a very black or white question. You're either getting fucking haunted or you're not. Trauma is not like gray. You either have baggage or you don't. Like that's where I'm
Hmm.
getting kind of confused about the metaphor, and like that's why I would much rather have had more moments throughout the story where, much like the finale in the car with Mitch, where we're given a situation where it feels real and then we say, and then it wryly winks at us and says maybe it wasn't. The problem with parts 2 and 3 of this story is we weren't getting the wry wink. We weren't getting that little like breaking the
Yeah.
narrative like wink wink nod nod to the audience that said that didn't happen. We only had confusion. Whereas in the finale, him standing in the middle of the road is pretty clear fucking black and white that that sequence was not real, that Mitch has probably been an agent this entire time, that he is just pushing the letter, pushing the envelope, quite literally pushing the envelope, to
Yes.
try and get us to
No,
bite.
he.
If you bite, you're sunk, you're caught, you're roped, you know,
Mhm.
and then you're slowly hanging yourself with a noose. And it's just like,
Yep,
okay,
exactly.
so Paul got free of this most likely by staying away from his son. And then at
Mhm.
some point the son got taken, whether that was during the story, before the story, or after the story. I don't care.
Mhm.
Frankly, I don't care.
Yeah, it doesn't really
It
matter,
doesn't matter. It's
honestly.
inconsequential at this point. And
Yeah,
then
it
and
just
then
it doesn't matter.
Brandon just went through a blender. I don't care about
Yeah.
Howie. I don't care about Howie. I essentially don't really care about Paul.
Mm-mm.
Like
No, me neither.
you're kind of saying like I could be down for a lot of these things, and I'm just saying I don't really care about a lot of these things. I I appreciate the story that was told for the quality of how it was told. I don't appreciate where the story went every single moment. And I don't need to
Yeah.
be like an armchair critic to be like, yeah, I need to love everything. Like I don't love
No,
everything. There's a lot of things I love that I
no
could
one
look at.
does.
Exactly. There's a lot of things I love that I could look at and be like, well, that's kind of dog shit.
Yes. Oh, same. Oh my God. Ugh. I just found this. I'll see if I can find it and send it to you. I just came across this like clip of a little thing John Waters did where he was like, "Be confident in your own bad taste. See a fucked up movie.
Agreed.
It's freeing to like if it's freeing to like awful things."
Yeah. Push those boundaries. Put yourself in that shit sandwich.
Exactly. Literally in a lot of his movies. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think for me, I agree. I actually it's hilarious. I like point A and C, right? I like the first and then I like the last. Everything in between I could probably do without.
And what's sad is if if the in between was crafted with just a little bit more intricacy, a little
Mm.
bit more brainstorming, this is one of those stories, and I said this earlier too. This is another one of those stories where I think it's so funny because I don't think I find myself in this situation as a writer, and maybe you can agree with me on this. I don't I don't think I ever do this. And I don't think I ever will do this because I'm much too much of a planner. I like to sit
Mhm.
down, I like to do notes. I start with bullet points become paragraphs, paragraphs become pages, and next thing you know you have a
Mm.
story. Because
That's true.
I want to answer all the questions. I want to make sure I'm covering all my bases. This strikes me as a story where a guy had a beginning and a guy had an end, and he just kind of let the middle fly and come to him as he was writing it.
Yeah, it seems like I feel like the story was not edited very hard. I feel like someone just kind of like spit it
Well,
all
that's
out
what I
there,
mean when this is
proofread it. Yeah.
analyze it for what it is quite literally. It is 14 parts all posted on different days to no sleep.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go ahead and say parts like 1 through 5 were planned. Parts
Mm-hmm.
6 through 10 were ad-libbed,
Yes.
and parts 10 through 14 were more or less given the same level of thought as parts 1 through 5.
Right.
And that's because going into it, this guy said, I have a beginning, I have an end, and I'll figure out the middle. And I maybe he's one of those people that works better under stress and says, I'll figure out the middle as I go. Because it's hard for me to say anything constructive about the middle of the story. I don't get it. I don't see
It's
it. It's too
it's like
convoluted.
people always ask, like in a lot of the writing spheres I'm in, people always ask if you're like a plotter or if you're like a pantser, where you just go by the seat of your pants and just write shit with no plan at all. And definitely how I feel like this was written.
Yeah.
Which
Yeah,
is
agreed.
also why, like, don't get me wrong, if you can write by the seat of your pants, good for you. But I personally, this is my hot take. A lot of people say they can do that, and then they write something like this,
Yeah.
and it's
Not
like,
everyone is Stephen King. Stephen King is
mm, mm.
absolutely a pantser.
Oh yeah, well, because that man was on so much cocaine though. Like that's not even fair.
Well, that's
Like
just
we
his entire career is I'm going to sit down and write 148 pages in one go. And then
in
I'm going
one
to take
go.
3 weeks. I'll have a couple drinks and then I'll sit down and write the next 148 pages.
Mhm.
Not everyone can do that.
Just fucking
I will
ridden
sit
with
with a
cocaine.
brainstorm and with a bullet point list for 6 months.
I'm like I plot like I use the nine block 27 chapter structure. So I break it into like
Mini
a flow
chapters.
chart
Yeah.
almost. Yeah, like I just sort of like I give myself sort of like the bullet points of where I want things to go, and then I let myself do whatever to get there. So I'll give myself a starting and an ending point for every chapter and every like, act basically.
It's
But then
crazy how easy
everything in
that should
between
be
is
for
just
most people and how many of them fuck that up.
honestly, it's
Especially
super helpful
Hollywood.
and it's oh god, tell me about it. They're just listen, there's certain things are just better when you plan it out even slightly. Even if you only give yourself the barest skeleton, it's still something. Because otherwise, you end up just putting a whole lot of unnecessary shit in there that nobody wanted to read and that didn't add anything to your story.
What's your
I
overall
don't,
feeling about how this ended?
I'm realizing I'm coming off as very like mean.
No, 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 no.
And
We've been
no,
pretty
I'm
much
and I'm
saying this entire time like I don't agree with everything that was done, but I'm more or less happy with how it ended.
yeah, exactly. It's not like I really don't think that it's bad. It's got a great
It's not.
concept, and I think that there's
It's
some really
not.
good lines in here and some really, really great execution on like the horror, of being essentially stalked by a tulpa that just grows stronger the more you think about it. So I don't know, like there's a lot of really, really good shit in this. I think that's why the convoluted middle part is so bothersome, I think, because everything around it is so good. It's like cracking open like a cookie and then finding a rock in the middle. And you're like, I mean, I'm still gonna eat the parts that don't have the rock, but like, man,
It's a shame it
we could
had
have
that
just left
rock
that
in
out.
there. Yeah.
Yeah, we could have just left it out, and then it would have just been cookie. We'll get it
Yeah,
next time, boys.
yeah. And ultimately like it's
It's fun.
it's easy to take swings when you're on a forum like Reddit. We don't give it enough credit for
Oh
what
yeah.
it does, for what these people are capable of, for everything I've read in the last 10 years. This is episode I don't even fucking know at this point, like 297 or something. Like we've been doing this for a long time. Like this was in no way shape or form the worst thing we've ever read. I have notes, I have thoughts, but at the end of the day
Feelings,
it started well.
vibes.
It started well, it ended well. I am content, I think is the right word. I was worried. I was worried for a while that I wasn't going to like the ending, that it wasn't
I
going to be
was
worth
too.
it. But I think the confirmation of him saying I'm over it and then Mitch kind of being like his like withdraw his what's the word for when someone slips from sobriety?
Falling off the wagon.
Yeah, like there's like a word.
Relapse, relapse,
Relapse.
relapse.
Yeah, if
There you go.
if
I got
if
there.
if the if the hook and worm of his quote unquote proof was dangled out there and it was given to us with this kind of full frontal confirmation that it was absolutely this thing getting him to try and bite, I'm
Damn.
happy with it ending by him saying, "And I drove away," because I ain't got time for that. I'm too busy
Kind of
trying to
appreciate
live
it,
my
honestly.
fucking life. I mean, it sounds like you. It's funny.
It's metal, honestly. But I mean, what's more metal than refusing to give something evil attention?
I love that.
It's just no, I'm not going to pay attention to that actually. This thing makes my life worse. My life is better when I don't look at it.
Oh my god, it's literally the conversation I've had with like every single toxic ex that's tried getting back into my life.
Oh god. Oh
And that's when
no.
Deputy Dewey is sitting somewhere as I say, "Sounds like my ex-girlfriend." That's also a joke that I've been saying on this show for 10 years. Whenever something awful happens, I say, "Sounds like my ex-girlfriend." But I mean, that's the truth, is like the trauma, the toxicity that surrounds these events. Baggage only exists as far as you're willing to carry it and how you
Right.
carry it. And I'm not trying to get self-help about it. I'm just stating facts. I
No,
think I
and
think a
that's
lot
I
of us carry baggage in a lot of different ways, and this story is just, it's another way of saying it's how you carry things.
right. And
Cuz
also like I don't know. I appreciate the idea also that it's like it's not like it's not like a if you slip up once it's over thing. It's like you have time to you have time to be gentle with yourself and then keep going and try
yeah, it
again.
literally says you'll have good days and you'll have bad days.
Bad days, yeah, exactly. Good days and bad days. Well, I guess that the true coat rack really was the
The
trauma we
trauma
made
we
along
carried
the
along the
way.
way. And to quote my favorite anime of all time, "You'll carry that weight."
Ah, so good.
I think that's fair. I think it's a fair ending for a very uh, middling to underwhelming style story.
Yes, I agree.
Because it had such a ripper of a fucking title. How can you have a title
Yeah.
like that and then not follow through on it? What the fuck?
You know, and you know what's funny is that usually I feel like it's the opposite, where like the
We have
title
such a shit
absolutely,
title and then we get a banger of a story.
yeah, exactly. It's like a banger story, but then
My
an
romantic
awful
cabin
title.
getaway.
Yeah, see, like that. That's a terrible
Banger
title.
fucking story.
No offense, guys, but it is terrible. You could have given it something way cooler.
The
I
previous
don't know
tenant of
what.
my apartment left a list. Yeah,
Yeah,
what
that
did
one
it
wasn't
say?
great either,
Did you
actually.
give you really good ingredients on how to bake the best cookies? No, it was about how to not get fucking murdered.
What about the bitch who was
The
house sitting
man,
and she had rules? That was another rules one we read.
the man in my basement takes one step forward every week.
That's fucking scary as shit.
And when he takes a step forward, I'm gonna think about my dead friend from 20 years ago, and I'm gonna get sad about it, and then
Get out of my
he's gonna
head.
get forward and he's gonna be like, "Hey, are you okay?" And I'm gonna say, "No, I'm not okay. I'm actually going through some stuff right now, and you know what? This house is pretty expensive. I drowned out all of my savings trying to afford this house, and in this economy with my job,
In this
it's
economy?
COVID. Like, are you trying to tell me that I
It's
should be
so
okay with all of this? I'm not okay with all of this, and now I'm thinking about my dead friend from 20 years ago. So fucking thank you for reminding me. The man in my basement is a fucking coat rack."
just throw like a blanket over him and be like, shut up, like he's a bird.
Shut up, nerd.
Shut up, nerd, it's nighttime, and then he just goes to sleep under the blanket.
Okay. Any final thoughts?
Mm, um, if what Mitch said was true and it's a tidbit, like it was like designed to try and addict him and it was also true
Yeah, it was a thread.
because I feel like it was. So the implication is that Paul or Mitch literally went into the garbage truck, dug out fistfuls of splinters, and
Well, no,
put
he
it
had.
back together
Well, yeah, I mean,
in
yeah,
the
he might have done that.
with their bare hands.
See, I liked it more when he was like, and I went to his backyard and he had a shed full of coat racks.
Yes, the whole thing, the whole
Oh,
time. So yeah,
that's funny.
I guess my parting words
Santa
is
Claus is
goddamn
real and he's full of coat racks.
pretty full of coat racks, sometimes with wires.
Oh, so that's your final thought.
Hmm.
My final
Yeah,
thought
that's all
is
I got.
is a cathartic one. I love reading stories with you. I always have a really good time reading with you. I'm glad that
I
this
love reading with you
I'm glad that this
too.
series was another example of how fun it is to read these things together.
Yes,
And
because it really fucking is, man.
hopefully the next thing we come back for breathes new life into us and not coat racks.
And not coat racks, please and thank you.
what's
No
the
coat racks,
what's
no
the
pigskin.
meme for this episode?
Wait, what was the G.I. Joe and knowing is half the
Knowing it's
battle?
half the or it's the what the more you know with the star.
Yeah, that's a good one. The more you know is very good.
Yeah, that's
Then we could
fair.
also do one of the Jimmy Neutron brain blasts.
Shit.
Although I'm not sure I had one of those this entire time.
For me, it was more like the Pepe Sylvia, Charlie Day standing in front of the whiteboard with like lines everywhere,
Yeah,
and
yes,
and
that's the one.
the narrator is more like Mac saying, "Oh no, Paul's alive and he's pissed as hell."
No, that
He's been
it
wondering where
has
all
to
his fucking mail is.
it has to be the Charlie meme. It has to be. That's the one.
Okay, agreed, agreed.
It doesn't get better.
So the final thought of this episode, the one we're taking home today, is that sometimes going crazy and going down the rabbit hole and filling your entire whiteboard full of Pepe Sylvia is not the answer.
Sometimes the answer is like doing yoga and eating a vegetable or something.
You're back to the self-help.
Going
Stop
to
telling me what to
therapy, I guess.
do.
I'm just saying. This thing said, hey, you could be upset about a man in your basement, or you could go to fucking therapy, pussy. Just go to fucking therapy. Just
you
go.
you
Go,
heard
or
it
this
here first,
pigskin man is
folks.
gonna rip your face apart.
You heard
It's like,
it here
I think
first,
more men would go
folks.
to therapy.
I mean,
I feel like more
I don't
men would go
anymore,
to
but I
therapy if
have.
we.
This
Well,
is
that's
my
what I mean, though.
therapy.
That's well, if I threaten you with a man in your basement that's gonna come and rip your face up, you would go back to fucking therapy.
I probably would. You're right.
I would go.
and this is where we'll lead you to our sponsor for this episode, BetterHelp.
Oh
Meet with a new therapist online who's probably not qualified to deal with any of your problems.
no. Every time you tell them about your trauma, they're gonna say things like, "Oh, bummer," or "Dang."
You should
That's
probably smoke
great.
some weed and get over it like everyone else.
Have you tried not being a little bitch? All that kind of stuff. It's great. It'll definitely help you. Everyone should use it.